We can get another table, Steve. Like there's a table in the back over there. No, it's not good enough. Pull that table over there. This one right here. Sure. Hey, hi. Once they see you.
Audience. Oh, yeah. Hey, how you doing, Edna? Good. How are you? Good. How you doing?
It's going good. It's good.
So will this be the only time you're to the left of us?
Good point.
All right, so, oh, a table's coming up.
Just give that. We need room for two more? Yeah, we need two more. We need two more. We need slide down.
Excellent. I should like to begin our day with Elder Harry Bone to come to say opening prayer. He said you can stay seated, don't stand up. So, Elder.
Miigwech, thank you very much. I was invited to come to do an opening prayer for a working session this morning. So there was nobody here this morning. So the session this afternoon, I guess, is just as important because we have very important people here who are going to be working for our people and our children. The prayer that I'm going to provide you is a prayer that I learned since the time of 1969. It's a pipe prayer that covers the 7 sacred directions of our nationhood. It tells us our identity and who we are as Anishinaabe people. It's important we do this because every time that you hear or see an elder saying a prayer through the pipes, 7 sacred directions, that reminds us who we are as Anishinaabe people, our identity as people, and as nations as well. So that's the prayer I'm going to provide. I learned this prayer at the time of 1969 from elders at that particular time, our leaders, that stood up for our country to remind that the government, we do have treaties in this land, and the treaties are all about law, that kind of stuff. So I think, and also that, I'm going to say the prayer in the language of our people to honor the people that, have signed the treaty 145 years ago. So keeping that in mind, it's Anishinaabe language, so that, just listen to the words, it'll be a short prayer from a larger prayer because, I'm told that, you only got 3 minutes to say your prayer, I know you guys got 5 minutes or so, mine is only 3 minutes, so with that, just keep that in mind, okay? Miigwech. Hami sawi asema gabin takonak. Hami mage mi ondin laman. Chimigagi zmoka gamin dominan. And Miss Shomis Miigwech migo nongum. Minashkin my shnamik jawen jigain, kiminatswin. Hami mage mi debet tabank. Aning emi chiang, gagi pijimini guiziang. Kami chakatun when on kami kagigitot. She can the mot where this yotan like Pionchima Bagit Noma was young, where this Nigan to be no Jiminanik. And Miss Thomas Kimi which me go nongum. Mi wa kikami do katamang, kami on Jibagit Namuang, kami Jivisinang, kami on Jiminiquan, Nakodamin mi Kinagego. As you come with the Wabanagi Pijimish and Ingamichikai Gitong, Hamin Nakodamin, Shawan where the Gakipish Kinamo Yang and Ingamichiang, Minakodamin. Mementagated Ganichibangish among me and Nakomakan, Gituna Magan the country can Kinchikagi out, and it's struggling like a dana way of changing any Aminazionia, Amiang of a sweet torment, most said to Ang. There be no Jimin and the Canish, Junicasigo, where the Agip on the South Gag Pijimini who is young. As you come here to Gabi Jobish Canal, since Sedoin among, and Ingamichiang, Agijama is no longer Magimigo, Jiminogai get out, longer Magamigagi get out. Jimmy Chaka twin, who you doing now, Chipasagim, Chimoset Tuang, Amigamigai Gitong, and Miss Shomas Gagimish, which Gabikinamo Gang, Migimikidong, Mijawan Mishnam, Mijawan Mishnam, Mijawan Mishnam. Thank you, Mikwach.
Thank you, Elder Bone. I should like to invite Louis Harper from the Grand Chief's office to say hello to you on behalf of Grand Chief Derek Nepenak.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Louis Harper. I'm one of the assistants to the Grand Chief's office. I'm just here to announce that Grand Chief has been called away to attend to a family matter in Edmonton. Unfortunately, he got a call yesterday evening and had to leave to attend to that matter. But I would like to wish everybody good afternoon and good luck in their presentation this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. It is because of Grand Chief Nepenak that we've got this forum happening today. He's encouraging First Nations to participate in the provincial election and is keenly interested to hear for both the leaders and grassroots on what each party has to say with respect to First Nations issues. We've reorganized a little bit in terms of how the forum will be taking place. For the 5 parties that we've got a opportunity for a spokesperson from each party to address the forum and given 7 minutes to be able to do that. From there, each of the candidates that are here will have an opportunity to say hello up to 3 minutes. And then from there, we'll have questions and answers taken from the floor, and hopefully restricting your answers to 2 minutes or less. Want to be politicians and politicians, because the more answers that get answered, the more questions that we, in a fast way, the more questions that we can actually deal with, which I'm interested to hear your responses to some of our really good questions from the floor. In no particular order, just because this is the form that I got here, I've got the list of the parties, starting off with the Liberal Party, and, Rona Bakari. Yay. Please come on up. Yeah. We got this little annoying clock here. Okay. just telling folks. Oh, awesome, thank you.
I'm not going to be 7 minutes, but I will change your microphone a lot lower. Can you guys hear me? Good. Sorry, I can't help it. Perfect, thank you. I'm just going to begin by recognizing that we're on Treaty 1 land, home of the Métis Nation. To all distinguished guests, and this actually is fantastic, that there's this many people representing across party lines. We should all be very, very proud of that, because I was going to say something about partnerships, and I was going to actually talk about what we as a party represent, but I think I'm going to change what I want to say. And what I actually want to say is about partnerships across party lines. We have an opportunity of a lifetime here, right now, to move forward the message of our Indigenous population in Manitoba on a federal level and on a provincial level. And with the kind of candidates that we have across this table from our party, I think that this can actually get done this time around. So I feel very proud standing here. I feel very proud seeing what the forum looks like, and I think that this should represent what our future looks like, so that should be great. The Manitoba Liberal Party, and everyone was watching the federal budget yesterday, which should have made us all very proud. We have been working very together with our federal counterparts to make sure that the value system that we represent as liberals not only resonates across Manitoba, but across this country. And we are seeing that happen in terms of our federal leadership. On a provincial level, Manitobans have heard me talk about partnership day in, day out. They've heard me talk about having Indigenous representation. Just today we announced in the legislature, proportional representation, guaranteed 10 positions, just so the voices are heard. Again, this is critical. There is an opportunity, regardless of historic allies now, to partner not only on a provincial level, on a federal level, but again on a municipal level to move our visions forward. I believe our visions are more similar than we actually recognize. I believe that we are truly in a situation where we have an opportunity to empower our young Indigenous vote. We have people who can show Manitobans what they can do, but they need true partners. And what I've committed to over and over throughout these 2 years of campaigning is that true partnership. That means for resources, that means in terms of candidates, that means in terms of every policy that we come out with has to do with our entire province as a nation. So nation-to-nation partnerships, I couldn't be prouder to be here. I apologize that I'm going to be sneaking out right away, but we have good representation here in terms of our candidates, Judy Clausen, Cara Wilson, Tyler Duncan, Stefan and Noel Bernier. So ask them all your tough questions, because I assure you they have great answers. Thank you very much for having me, and I will see you soon.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Just a couple of things. We have a camera going here because we are, what's it called, live streaming. So there's an opportunity to take questions online. And I would like to recognize that Chief Sheldon Kent from Black River First Nation is here. Chief, howdy, Dave. And also Grand Chief Sheila North Wilson from MKO Northern Chiefs Organization. The next party on my list is the NDP party.
Thank you very much, Marcel. Do I get to use a bit of the Liberal leader's time as well? Thank you very much for the opportunity of being here, relatives. Pitamaga miskatnoonista itsihentamano matapigiskatamako atetkego anagisnano katuskatamakinuak missoite agayu kiskentena anagisnano Inohetepe anmetaasik mistake nimenogo tegi vetnoh. Aga mina kotagi oho iskonegana missoite. Aga ma apogotagi atuskatamaho gego anagistano. Kitti nimenogo istoga iso apateg tatuskatamach. I'm very pleased to be a part of the NDP. Allow me to apologize on behalf of Premier Sullinger. He had to be at another location this afternoon, so he's unable to be here today. I'm proud to be a part of a government, indeed, that takes the issue of reconciliation seriously. As you know, the TRC in their final report in Ottawa in December laid out a call to action of all provincial and territorial governments, and we here in Manitoba went to work very quickly and came up with Bill number 18, which is really to deal with the issues of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which is called A Path to Reconciliation. And very shortly I'll be handing those out to everybody for your consideration. And we're the first province or territory in Canada to address the issue of reconciliation among Indigenous peoples in the rest of Canada. So I'm very happy about that. We have undertaken numerous endeavors, initiatives with the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs and the First Nations of the province of Manitoba. We are, as you know, building on the east side road of Lake Winnipeg, and we're breaking some new ground there, developing some initiatives, developing opportunities, training, employment, and a sense of pride for Indian people on the east side of the province of Manitoba. Regrettably, we have not all had the opportunity of dissecting the federal budget that was laid out yesterday by the finance minister, but I know we're going to have an opportunity to do that. But there's no mention of partnering with the province of Manitoba. And this is a multi-million-dollar initiative which connects the east side communities with the remainder of the world. As well, we're very happy that we're now including the legacy of the residential school era and the residential school experience in the school curriculum, along with the 60 scoop reality that many of our children were taken away against the will of their families and placed in foreign environments, either in the province or outside of the country of Canada, as well as gaining knowledge and giving knowledge to people that may not be aware of the treaties and the importance of what those represent to us, the First Peoples of this country. We're very proud as well of the University College of the North, something that a lot of naysayers say would never happen, but we are now seeing the University College of the North paying dividends and also educating many of our people in remote and isolated communities through the satellite communities and satellites that we have in 13 communities throughout northern Manitoba. As well, a key energy initiative that we partnered with the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs on, which is supporting food markets in all the Island Lake communities, all 4 of the Island Lake communities, called the Meacham Farm Project at Garden Hill. I believe that this is giving us a tremendous opportunity to address the whole issue of northern healthy foods and addressing some of the health needs. We're also the first government in Canada to develop dialysis treatment facilities on reserve and going beyond the jurisdictional battles of years gone by. And as you know, we have renal dialysis treatment facilities in Barons River, Garden Hill, Peguis, and in Norway House. We have transferred over 600,000 acres of land under TLE to the federal government, and I know there was a delegation from the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs that went to Ottawa to try and have the federal government move a little faster in converting this land into reserve land in a very near future. Together with the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs as well, prior to 1999, we aspired to have our own casinos, and now we have some of our own casinos, and we have a gaming table that's headed up by my colleague, the Honorable Dave Chomiak, as well as my fellow candidates from our party and also the other parties that are here. So we are moving forward on a tremendous amount of issues. The Wasquatam project, which is the hydro development project, is providing employment opportunities for many people. 50% of the workforce at the Kiosk project, as an example, are Indigenous peoples. So I'm very happy about that. The First Peoples Economic Development Fund is another partnership arrangement that we have with the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, which has resulted in more than 150 loans and some $100 million in developments. Do we have a lot more work to do? Of course we do. We have a lot more work to do, and I think that we can do that and achieve that through partnership arrangements. And I think that we have that opportunity now. We are also making arrangements to make sure that the wrongs that were done in the past to many of our communities as a result of development that our people were never consulted on, we have an opportunity to correct as we go forward. With that, friends, I want to wish my fellow candidates from all parties the very best of luck in their various campaigns, in their respective campaigns. My own fellow opponents in Kiewitnuk, I wish them well in their campaigns, and I thank you for the opportunity to allow us to express some of the things that we have in mind here and view as important. Heguzane, thank you.
Thank you. The next party is the Progressive Conservative Party.
Thank you very much. I'm very, very honored to be here. Thank you for the opportunity and the invitation to be here. And it is indeed nice to be sitting at a table like this with so many people that are interested in stepping forward into the political arena, because it really does matter. When I was the finance critic about 3 years ago, I had gone to our leader, Brian Pallister, and I had indicated to him that in order to move Manitoba forward, we really needed to do a better job of looking at northern Manitoba in terms of economic development. And I have to say that Brian was very, very interested and very supportive of this. My interest in the North started when I was a small child growing up in Bonito. We spent a lot of time fishing in the North. I can't say I'm an expert about the North, but I spent all my summers for many, many years traveling northern Manitoba and doing a lot of fishing. So as the finance critic, I had an opportunity to look at all of this and see what we needed to do in Manitoba. And we know that a strong North will make for a stronger Manitoba. So I spent a year doing some initial consultations. After that initial consultations, we came up with a document called Northern Lights. Northern Lights was geared towards looking at certain pillars in the community with the idea that we could take this document forward as a starting point for discussion. We knew we didn't have it all identified. We knew we had more of an opportunity to meet with Northerners and talk to Northerners about what mattered to Northerners. We kept hearing over the last decade that nobody's consulting with Northerners about Northern issues. So we have made a very, very concerted effort that we are going to always continue with consultations, because it absolutely matters. So we sent this document out, and in fact we sent it all over Manitoba to various different stakeholders. We did send it to every chief in Manitoba. We have then since gone north over 24 times to meet with people, and as I would always say, that consultation has not ended. It will not end, because consultations should never stop. We must always continue to listen. As we were talking to people in the north, we really came across, and in fact, a lot of the ideas we had initially in this document turned out to be what we had heard and what we knew, but we did come across other ideas, and I have to say that the results of our consultations have been very, very productive. We have some very good ideas that we can work with alongside everybody to develop a stronger North. And we certainly looked at jobs and training in the economy, mining and mineral resources, healthy living, infrastructure, tourism, and housing has certainly jumped forward as a major issue. We also have had very good conversations about mental health, addictions, and suicides, and we know that that is an absolute critical area that we must address, and we are prepared to address it. So the next step This was only a readiness strategy. In opposition, we don't have the ability to create an actual northern strategy. But we have looked all across Canada at what other provinces have done. We have seen that they have really looked at it quite comprehensively. We need to do that in Manitoba. A 5-page document developed by bureaucrats is not what one would call a northern strategy. A northern strategy has to be robust, and it has to involve those that live, work, and raise their children in the north, people that are looking for more hope. And that was one of the big comments that came from lots of people in the north, and that is we want hope for our children, we want a better life. And we gathered all of that. We have compiled the information now about what we have learned, and we are ready, should we form government, to move forward with the development of a northern strategy. And it will be a document that is going to be put forward with the inclusion and collaboration of people that live and work in the north, because you are the ones there. Manitobans are at the front lines of making all of this happen. We have already made a couple of announcements. One is the development of Yes North. It is a replication of Yes Winnipeg. Yes Winnipeg created 7,800 jobs in Winnipeg through that process. We are looking at moving forward with Yes North that will actually bring together a lot of the talent around economic development in the north, education, training, that Northerners identify are needed in order to move Manitoba forward. Part of our Northern announcement also included an increase, a dramatic increase in tourism spending. Manitoba spends the least in all of Canada. We're dead last in spending on tourism, and we have made a commitment to raise that amount up. We have also, our leader has also indicated a respect for the duty to consult, and that will play an important part in our role if we were to form government. So we have already, made some commitments. We still have more. There's a lot of opportunities around children, around healthcare, and many other areas. And we certainly have gained a lot of knowledge from the people we've talked to that has built our view around what we can do and the opportunities. So we will be able to move forward should we form government. And I have to say it was a project that has been fully embraced by my caucus, by our leader, and we are very, very honored that we had the opportunity to do this. And we look forward to be able to rolling out a northern strategy in Manitoba should we form government. Miigwech.
Thank you. The next party is the Manitoba Party.
Hello, my name is Frank Goodon, and I represent the Manitoba Party. I'm going to be running as a candidate in the Arthur Verdon riding, and I've been asked to give our party's policy platform on Indigenous peoples here in Manitoba. Okay, I was sent the letter like everyone else was, and so I thought I'd outline a few things here. The implementation of Bringing Our Children Home report. Manitoba Party believes that a lot of resources are being put into a failing system. We agree with the Bring Our Children. Okay. Okay. Okay, the Manitoba is. Okay, can everybody hear me now? Yes? Okay. With the mic in my way, I can't read my words. The Manitoba Party believes that a lot of resources are being put into a failing system. We agree with Bring Our Children Home report that the system practice must change immediately. The Manitoba Party agrees with critical system additions are required, including family support, advocacy, and intensive holistic healing opportunities. The Manitoba Party believes that the current provincial system is an inefficient, bureaucratic waste of taxpayers' money and needs to be changed and turned over to a system with little to no government involvement. The Truth and Reconciliation Report. The Manitoba Party is committed to work with the Aboriginal peoples of Manitoba in implementing as many of the 94 recommendations of the TRR that is within our power to do so. This report was too long in coming, and no time should be wasted in seeing that these recommendations are seriously looked at by our provincial government, especially the recommendations on child welfare. Improving First Nations education. While the federal Liberals look to keep their $2.6 billion figure in the 2016-17 federal budget unveiled on Tuesday and have blown past the 2% funding cap, a close look at the number reveals that a third of the money for core First Nations K-12 education won't appear unless the Trudeau government receives re-election in the autumn of 2019. The Manitoba Party believes in removing any provincial barriers, including access to education, and the, again, government-controlled bureaucracy that has done for decades, always claiming it's a federal issue and not a provincial. Manitoba Party believes that if a child is living in Manitoba, then that child, no matter if they are Aboriginal or not, deserves to be educated and have his or her primary education taken care of by the province. Improving employment and business opportunities for First Nations, including deregulating the monopoly on hydro energy projects and finding cleaner alternative ways of using energy. The Manitoba Party believes that all Crown corporations, including Manitoba Hydro, deal with First Nations on a nation-to-nation basis. Also, Manitoba Hydro needs to deal with each band in areas of employment and business opportunities, and we, the Manitoba Party, will support First Nation people seeking these opportunities. The Manitoba Party will work with First Nations communities to seek out alternative energy solutions and will look at the viability of solutions like geothermal and hydrogen generators. I have recently returned from Russia where at the present, geothermal energy is utilized mostly for space and district heating and for industrial and agricultural purposes. 6 towns with a total population of about 100,000 use geothermal direct heating systems. We can look at duplicating this renewable resource here on our First Nation communities. The Manitoba Party believes that the power taken from their lands should not be sold back to them. All energy from hydro should be free as part of the agreement to extract this resource, and that Manitoba Hydro should be set up where First Nations receive royalties from this extraction. I would encourage everyone here today, especially the media, to look into MISO, M-I-S-O, and what interests it has in Manitoba Hydro, and look closer at NAFTA and who controls the water. The TPP, ask yourself, does all these agreements supersede corporate jurisdiction over sovereign jurisdiction? The Manitoba Party will do all in its power to protect not only First Nations from these agreements and MISO, but the people of Manitoba. Climate change. The Manitoba Party's platform on climate change is a common sense-based platform. The Manitoba Party takes into consideration carbon absorption, as not all CO2 emitted by people stays in the atmosphere. Much of it returns to the earth, mainly through carbon absorption and sequestration power of plants, soil, and trees. A conservative estimate of Canada's existing carbon absorption capacity based on land area and global carbon absorption average indicates that Canada, let alone Manitoba, could already be absorbing 20 to 30% more CO2 than we admit. When was the last time you've heard a political leader, let alone the media, talk about our carbon absorption capacity? Most of the provinces, except Saskatchewan, want to, of course, tax everyone for it. And Manitoba's Greg Selinger thinks he can magically reverse flooding via taxation. Taxing Canadians to try to make the planet Earth greener is a futile policy based on a half-blind approach that only considers emissions from our resources, not absorption from our land and forests. With this platform, we believe that all Manitobans, including First Nations, are living in a province that is carbon neutral. As for natural resource extraction, this should only be approved by First Nation communities where the extraction has taken place. Manitoba Party will not force First Nations to accept any deal with corporations if they feel this will harm their homes, land, and people. A side note to this question is more of a personal policy and not a party platform. But I personally believe that all Crown lands should be removed from the government and given back to the First Nations. That land, its name Crown, shows that the monarchy in Britain owns it. And to me, this land was stolen and should not hold the name Crown, but Aboriginal lands. And as an MLA, I will call on the government governing to do the honorable thing and give this land and its resources back to the people who owned it. Because I believe that the monarchy has no right to our land here in Canada. In closing, I'd like to say that our Aboriginal communities have been pushed past a point of no return. Sometimes we have been forced and sometimes we have chosen to go past this point. It is a choice we make, a line we decide to cross, but then we live with the consequences. We can rethink our choices a million times about what we decide we own. It becomes part of who we are. And while we may be crossing that river, our footprints will always remain on the other side. The Manitoba Party is new, it thinks outside the box, and we're the only party that we feel can work together with the Aboriginal peoples of Manitoba to secure a better future. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that we'll stay on top and push the timer button when the person comes up and starts to speak. I should like to recognize that Chief Michael Yellowback from Manitoba Cree Nation is here. And also Councillor Luke Muskego from Bunabanabe Cree Nation. Our last party is the Green Party.
All right, thank you oh wow, they run the clock quickly. Thank you very much for having me here today. I want to start off by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the homeland of the Métis Nation. Really excited to be out here today. I think just firstly, just tell you a little bit about myself. My name is James Bedham. I am the leader of the Green Party of Manitoba. I was born on a mixed livestock operation near Rapid City, Manitoba in the Little Saskatchewan River Valley. I moved here in 2001 to start university. Got a double honors major in political studies and economics. Spent a couple of years working, went back to law school, did my law degree part-time, did some research and environmental consulting, including working with First Nations while I worked through my law degree, and now I work at Yurch Law as a lawyer, working primarily with Chief and Counsel of First Nations as well as residential school survivors. So that's a little bit about myself. I also want to acknowledge we have another candidate here, Kelly Whelan-Enns, who will be coming up shortly. I wanted to acknowledge some of my candidates that couldn't be here. Albertine Spence, our candidate in Point Douglas. She herself is doing some schooling as well, so couldn't be here and wanted to be here. And also I had a chance to speak with our candidate in the PAW, Patrick Wood, last night. And I want to use it as a lead-in to recognize that Indigenous people in this country face challenges that the rest of us don't face. So Patrick Wood works in Child and Family Services at Pimachikamak. And he's working his job right now and running as a candidate. And when I checked in with him, I was like, Patrick, I'm doing this tomorrow. Wanted to see if you wanted any words that you wanted to send. And I was impressed by his strength. We all know what's going on in Pimachikamak right now and his strength to continue on. And I thought to myself, I don't know if I would have that same level of strength. And it's those challenges that Indigenous people face. One of the biggest ones being poverty, right? And how poverty ripples out and has repercussions through healthcare, through child and family services, through justice. It costs us a ton of money, and we need to address poverty first and foremost. And that's why I'm really happy to announce that when we opened our campaign, we led with our guaranteed annual income policy. This is a policy that would apply to all Manitobans, and it's not just a pilot project. We're looking at implementing this across Manitoba within existing tax revenues. I'd encourage you to go to www.greenparty.mb.ca, but it would cut, by our calculations, the number of people living below the poverty line by 45%. And sadly, a lot of those people are going to be Indigenous because the rates of poverty are much higher among Indigenous people than non-Indigenous people. So I think that would have a huge impact. We have a crisis in our child and family services system right now in Manitoba. I thank the AMC for their report bringing our children home, because it noted that we have the highest child apprehension rate in the world. Highest child apprehension rate in the world. That is a shame. It's 100% wrong, and it's sad that almost 100%, at least 85, 90% and up, are Indigenous children. This isn't all the province's fault, to be fair. The inequity in federal funding is a substantial problem, and although the Liberal government made some announcements, it doesn't go far enough. It's not going to meet the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal decision in terms of equalizing funding, which is leading, in many cases, to the apprehension of our Indigenous children to put them into the provincial system because there's more funding there. To me, this is a repeat of history. As I said, many of my clients are residential school survivors. This is a repeat of residential schools and the 60 Scoop legacy. And if we don't get ahead of it, we're going to pay for it. Our fastest growing segment of our population is Indigenous youth. This is an opportunity. We can continue on the path that we went in before, or we can trudge forward to a new path of reconciliation. And I think it's entirely possible for us to accomplish that. But it means we have to invest. When it comes to child and family services, let's get caseloads below 20 workers. Let's provide supports to children until they're 25. When it comes to Indigenous youth and creating employment opportunities, we need an Indigenous youth strategy. Other aspects that we need, I want to acknowledge Mr. Robinson there noted that the NDP government has done some good work at expanding dialysis on reserve. This is something that we have to look at time and time again, whether it's education funding, healthcare funding, child and family services funding. We know that the funding isn't equal on reserve versus off reserve. And rather than getting hung up on jurisdictional quagmires, we need to just start moving first, because it's going to cost us in the end of the day. If someone's educational outcomes ends up leading them to a life of crime, then we all pay for that. And it's a missed opportunity for tax revenue to get that person working, and a missed opportunity of the life of a person. I want to talk a little bit too about resource sharing. Obviously, the government of Manitoba took over natural resources with the Natural Resource Transfer Act, which means we have a responsibility. It's not just something we need to do, it's a constitutional duty to consult and accommodate with Indigenous people. And we need to make sure that we're sharing their resources with them. I'll acknowledge the NDP late in the game said they're going to share 25% of royalties, a few weeks before they called the election. I think that's the right strategy, but why haven't we done it for years? We know there's a legacy of hydro development. We know it's had an impact on Indigenous people, particularly in the north, but not just on the Nelson River, on the Winnipeg River as well. And Mr. Robinson talked about the benefits, but I would argue that there's a lot more that could be done, and the resource sharing needs to be expanded. And the Green Party of Manitoba, if we were elected government, would do that. And if we're in the legislature, we're going to make sure we hold the other party's feet to the fire and make sure that they address these issues. Climate change is obviously a huge issue. The Green Party of Manitoba has a comprehensive plan to deal with that, and part of it's going to be working with Indigenous First Nations, working together. One of my favorite examples is more greenhouses up north. Why would that be great for climate change? Well, it's good for local food production, decreases the cost of food, also means less need for flight, and food's being produced more locally at home. So we get social benefits and environmental benefits and economic benefits all at the same time. So there's so many issues that I could bring up. I wish I could cover every single Indigenous issue that's out there. I'm just going to address one last issue that I was told should be suggested to be bring up, which is we're now looking at a second channel to Lake Manitoba, but it's fundamentally vital that we do proper consultation and accommodation with Indigenous people, and that we make sure that there's proper environmental reviews, because the first one was done on an emergency order, and I don't know that the proper consultation, accommodation, and environmental reviews have been done. Unfortunately, I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to leave it at that, and thank you very much for your time, and please don't hesitate to ask me questions throughout the night. Thank you, or throughout the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. So now, this part of the forum will be an opportunity for the candidates to say up to 3 minutes hello and explain who they are. How about we start from the end over there? Starting from, you know what, that's why we got the mics here, so sorry for whatever. Might be just quicker if we just pass the mics, if that's okay. Go ahead.
My name is Kelly Whalen-Enns. I am the Green Party's candidate for St. Paul. I would like to acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory in the Métis homeland. I would also like to acknowledge my ancestors, Mi'kmaq and Wyandotte. And I would like to thank everyone for being here tonight. James has already spoken to a great deal of the things that could be done in the province and the way that the Green Party would like to improve the cultural content and the aid for First Nations here in Manitoba. There is so much that has not happened in the last 40 years or since the first dam in northern Manitoba got built. Sharing royalties on resource extraction is definitely one thing that could be done. I've spent the last 20 years working for Whalen Associates, watching governments get virtually every consultation wrong with First Nations in terms of actually applying traditional knowledge and actually doing proper interviews and not just phoning up the chiefs and saying, oh, hey, we had a conversation with the community. So there's actually a lot of grassroots work, a lot of community work that could be done in northern Manitoba, and a lot of work that could be done to repair. Manitoba Hydro has finally published that they earmarked about $350 for compensation here in the province. This goes a long way to saying that Manitoba Hydro is finally acknowledging that there's a great deal of reconciliation that needs to be done in this province. Over the years, there have been many attempts to provide actual voice for the First Nations through government consultation. And almost every single time, none of this has ever been written by the First Nations themselves. You've had participation, but in the end, you've generally had bureaucrats in government writing policy that actually does not support the First Nations at all, but actually provides more caveats and more support for Manitoba Hydro and outs for the actual government. As an MLA for the Green Party in St. Vital, I would be a voice for First Nation concerns. I would be a voice for issues on climate change, and I would be a voice for proper communication and actual joint communication between AMC, SCO, MKO. And these are things that I would support in this province. Thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you. I think we're going to change the mic. Hold on. We want a better mic because online they can't hear you. Hey, I just heard myself.
Oh, I have already spoken.
Excellent, thank you.
Tansei Anin Buju. My name is Edna Navis, and I would like to thank everyone. I'd like to thank them for inviting me to come here and speak and tell who I am. I would like to acknowledge the chiefs, the Grand Chief. I am a member of the Matthias Clome Cree Nation, who believes that a strong future is possible for the people and communities of Kiiwetinoong. I was raised in a little town called Cormorant, where my father was a trapper and a fisherman, so I grew up out in the trap line. My mother went to residential school, and she taught me how to make moccasins, how to tan hides, how to take care of my children and our home. When my youngest son was 2, I became a single mother, so I raised my children, making moccasins and cooking. We have 2 stores, which we got no government money and no money from the bank, and they are now, I have passed them on to my oldest son and my youngest son. I've been to basically every reserve in Kiiwetinoong as a touring coordinator, as someone trying to show the youth, teach the youth, talk to the youth. And I've been in the communities just lately, and people love their homeland. They are so proud of their communities, but they do need a road. They do need food that's a lot cheaper, but I've been encouraging them to go hunting, go fishing, plant some gardens. And you know what, a lot of the communities are doing that. You know, we were in this one community, we went to the northern store. They had steak and lobster there for $4.95 because nobody knew how to cook it, so we bought it and we cooked it. But a red pepper was $18. So you know what, it doesn't make sense for our food. And I believe that our reserves can be self-sufficient. They can all have their own store, their own restaurant, their own canning. It's a shame that a lot of our mukleks that are being sold are made in China. You know, I know they need jobs, but we need jobs too, and we need to start taking back our stuff. You know, and I believe that we need an elders council, community leaders, women and youth, to work to solve the most critical issues facing Kiiwetinoong. And that's better education, healthcare, housing, meaningful jobs and opportunities. With the East Side, every person that I talked to said they didn't have a job. They applied and applied and applied. None of them were working. We need recreation facilities, hope and opportunities for our young people, better health care. I think I've already talked about the healthy food and affordable prices. And you know, and to bring meaningful jobs to the north using clean energy, technology like solar power, wind power, with the support of hydro, to make sure Northern First Nations person leads training and job creation on the East Side Road Authority, to see the Hudson Bay Rail Line and Port of Churchill operations turned over to First Nations ownership with federal financing, to create a strategy to reduce the heartbreaking suicides among our young people, to ease the stress on families and community members caused by record high numbers of First Nation children in government care. That's where my heart really lies. And sorry, I only have but 2 minutes left, but that's where it is. Talk to me later. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's make sure we get the timing correct. Is it because it's online? Let's start it correctly. Awesome. Next person.
I've been asking people to cut me some slack for weeks, and here we go. Finally, they just did. Hey, good shna, no way we're going to talk about quit and go. Piju and do them, when they ming and do je. Opportunity can done Pijaya no ma ni bewe gamigong. Nimigo chuago go manito abe ogimakanak. Nimigo chuago go ogimag abi what the man ongum. Shugo dash away kichi ogimakan abi what no ongum. Tanse to te mak wapi ke hill in this nahason and tashunka ahamataki ape tashunka duta wakate amachi apero wachea and masi. So I greet you all in Anishinaabe Moen and some real bad Cree and Dakota with an Ojibwe accent on it. So start with that way and acknowledge the chiefs and the people here for hosting us at this lovely event. I just want to say I'm proud to be running with the Manitoba NDP because they are the first provincial government in Canada to enshrine the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action in law. And importantly, Murray Sinclair, his input was taken into account, and the bill was actually amended so that the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People is part of that law. So that now, it is the law of the land here in Manitoba that whoever is a Minister of Reconciliation in this province must respect the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And you all know that that means that the free, prior, informed consent of Indigenous peoples here must be respected. And I think that that's a very important standard. We've heard about the duty to consult. The duty to consult is the bare minimum. If we want reconciliation to really take hold, then we must actually work towards obtaining the consent of First Nations people before development occurs or before legislation that may impact them takes place. Over the course of my career, I've worked to bring about systems change in large organizations to make our world more respectful of Anishinaabe and Inuit and Dakota and Oji-Cree people. I worked with Grand Chief North Wilson at the CBC to make the coverage of residential school survivors more appropriate. And more recently, at the University of Winnipeg, I wrote the policy that makes sure that every undergraduate that goes to that institution from now on will learn something about First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Now, I am setting my sights on the provincial government. I hope to be able to represent the people of Fort Rouge, but also bring that same attitude of systems change towards the provincial government. So with that, I say, miigwech ka bizinda ayek, and Masi.
Hanin, everyone. My name is Nahani Fontaine, and I'm the NDP candidate for St. John's. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge that we're on Treaty 1 territory and the homeland of the Métis. More importantly, I just actually want to acknowledge every single person here sitting at the table. And I saw Althea. I want to acknowledge Althea and all of our Indigenous brothers and sisters that are putting their name forward to run. I'm sure, or maybe not, it's a scary process to put your name forward and really to just put your whole life in the public eye. And so I really just want to acknowledge everybody here, including Edna, and everybody on the courage that it takes to put our names forward. In the short time that I have, I also want to acknowledge Grand Chief Sheila North Wilson and the chiefs that are in attendance as well. In the short time that I have, I just want to just share that for most of my career, I've worked in nonprofit and including in Southern Chiefs Organization as the Director of Justice. In that portfolio, I had a lot of different files, including CFS, housing, the international file, obviously the women's file, and also justice. And one of the things that I did in respect of the justice file, one of my primary files was actually Aboriginal police relations. And in the very beginning, I did a lot of fighting against the WPS and the RCMP. And I changed my approach in respect of addressing our issues and fighting for our people in respect of oppression and marginalization and really just horrible treatment sometimes. Instead of fighting, I decided to work and bring everybody to the table to look at the issues that we have and how we can work together on solving those issues. Now, I know that for some people that approach may seem not the most desirable approach, but for me, it's what worked. I really love having the ability of bringing people together who are on opposite sides of an issue and creating a space in which we get to know each other a little bit better and in a more respectful manner. And this path that I've chosen now to put my name forward for the NDP, I'm extremely proud of because the NDP, in respect of working with families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, has shown that when you work with community and government and families, you can create just really beautiful moments and lasting things for the whole society. In respect of our monument dedication that we have at the Forks, that is there for the next 30, 40, 50 years, and I'm extremely proud of that work that we've done. Miigwech.
Thank you, Nahani. My name is Dave Chomiak, and greetings to all the leadership here, including the candidates, including the chiefs, elected leaders, and all of you here are leaders as we work together to solve problems in reconciliation. I guess I'm an elder here because I was elected at a time when a very famous Indigenous person sat near me in the legislature, and that was Elijah Harper. I walked out of the legislature with him the last time when he left, and he said to me, "Dave, don't forget Indigenous people." And since that time, I've had the honor of working with people like Eric Robinson, Oscar Laughlin, Frank Whitehead, Amanda Laughlin, and the candidates that are here, Wab and Nahani, and I'm sure the other candidates who I don't know as well, who understand the mutual understanding that is needed by all of us. And I think the highlight of my political life was the passage of the Path to Reconciliation Act, to see an act enacted unanimously by the legislature that sets out the intent of government and a strategy to work, not to tell First Nations, but to work with them and to offer an ear, is probably the highlight. And it may be a crossroads in Canadian history. With the new federal government, I hope they will enact similar legislation. I hope it'll be a model. And as Wab already indicated, it includes the UN Declaration. It was amended from the floor to include residential school survivors. It's the best example that I know of in my many years in the legislature of speaking with one voice. We don't always have to agree, but if we listen to each other, that defines what reconciliation is. That means we can go forward. Thank you for the opportunity of being here today.
Bonjour, Josh Gobeneshi Disnakad, Judy Clausen, Kiwetinook constituency. I'm running with Honorable Eric Robinson and my new friend over there, Edna Nabis. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm from St. Teresa Point First Nation, Medeni Gaming, and it's been an honor traveling to all these communities and making new friends. And it's also very discouraging as well, because later on today, I'm going to yet another person's wake who has committed suicide from my First Nation. And it's heartbreaking, and that's one of the reasons I'm running. I'm tired of burying kids. I'm tired of burying my relations back home. And the most tragic news I've had to deal with in going to these communities is that one community, the youngest person that has committed suicide was age 8. I don't understand how a child age 8 can even fathom that that's the answer. There are a number of beautiful initiatives that have taken place, but I still see poverty. It's ugly and it's growing. There was a whole bunch of commitments from the NDP, which I really appreciate, because it's so nice to see that we're trying to make progress, but there's still a disconnect. There's a huge disconnect. Why I myself have had a laundromat on my reserve. It failed miserably because I could make 130 grand a year, but my costs were 129. No one can survive off $1,000 profit, especially with 6 kids. Milk was a treat for my kids, $16.79 when I had to leave my reserve. $16.79 for 1 jug of milk. A cup of milk, a bowl of cereal, that's all my kids got every month on welfare day. Because I used my child tax to pay all the other bills that are become insurmountable because Hydro doesn't fulfill its agreements. We still pay the most highest amount in billings for Hydro, and it's tragic, and yet they make their money off of our lands. The reason I came to join this party was because I'm a business person. That's my love, that's my calling. I have a degree from the University of Manitoba. I had to leave my community to come down south to learn what it was that took to make a viable economy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kyra Wilson. Can everyone hear me? Sorry, thank you. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that's here today. Like I said, my name is Kyra Wilson. I'm from Long Plain First Nation. I'm running in the Fort Richmond riding. And the reason why I'm running is with my experiences working in child welfare. The number of children in care in Manitoba is unsurmountable. We have way too many children in care, and that's why I wanted to put my name forward, because of the experiences that I'm hearing from the families, the misunderstandings that the families have with the system and how to navigate through this broken system. There hasn't been any change in this system. It's actually gotten worse. The number of children in care right now is higher than the number of children that went to residential school. We had residential school, we had 60 scoop, and now we have the current child welfare system. Something needs to change. And that's why I'm running today, is because I want to fight for our children's futures. They're our leaders, and they're a very important aspect to our communities. Currently, when you look at devolution and giving Indigenous people the right to actually care for their children and for their communities, it hasn't worked. We're still actually having to listen and be dictated by provincial standards. As Indigenous people, we need to have the right to decide how we care for our kids and how we care for our communities. Enough is enough. Our children's lives are at stake. And it's really scary right now because children are taking their lives. So when you look at the Bringing Our Children Home report, it really identifies the needs of our people and of our children that are affected by the Child and Family Services system. Reconciliation is not taking our kids. That is not reconciliation. And we keep hearing this word reconciliation, and it's very important that reconciliation happens, but it doesn't start when taking our kids out of their homes and out of their communities. We need to focus on our future leaders who are our children. And when you look at apologies, there have been apologies for residential school, apologies for 60 scoop. What are we going to have from now, 15 years, 20 years from now? An apology about the current child welfare system? We need to start doing something today, because it's important that we look at what is happening. And we have over 11,000 children in care. And when you look at currently the monies that come from the federal government that go into the province to make sure that our children and our agencies are supported, there are clawbacks that are happening from the provincial government that are taking basically money from our agencies and money from our children's pockets. So this is something that needs to be heard, and this is something that I'm advocating for today. Is we need to look at changing the current child welfare system and look at an Indigenous model for caring for our kids. Miigwech.
That's good Muscat now. I welcome you all here, everybody who's here. Tyler Duncan, I'm Tyler Duncan from Norway House. I'm running in the PAW as a Liberal candidate. This feels different. I feel like a chief at a band meeting the way I'm sitting here. It's a different kind of experience, eh? But I first want to acknowledge the MKO Grand Chief, Sheila North Wilson. We went toe-to-toe in September, and she got the best of me and then some. It's nice to see you here, Grand Chief. I want to acknowledge Chief Sheldon Kent, Chief Michael Yellowback, my best friend, Councillor Luke Muskego, former Chief George Neepin of Fox Lake, and my former Chief Marcel Balfour, who was our moderator. Today I want to explain to you why I'm running for the Liberal Party. I was on the party executive. It made every news headline that I left the NDP. And I want to first extend my great respect and admiration for everybody at this table. Eric Robinson, Wab Canoe, I look up to you. And this party affiliation will never change my respect for either of you. I will always respect you and the work you've done. But I have left the NDP because I've seen too much complacency. I've seen too much pandering to the Indian Act, that is a federal issue. This is a federal issue. That is a federal issue. Our people needed housing, and we were told it's a federal issue. Well, we had a conservative government for 10 years. Obviously, we're not going to get anything from the federal level. We were ignored on the issues that mattered most to us. 11,000 of our kids in care, 97%, 91% are First Nation children. And this is not a crisis. If this was happening in any other city or municipality, this country would be turned upside down. People, we are in desperate need of change. And the tone that we see in this provincial election is NDP, Tory, same old story. We've had 16 years of the NDP. What matters to me is not what you see at election time, it's what you do in between. Implementing recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, 16 years into your mandate doesn't matter much to me. That's almost as long as I've been alive, people. We need strong government, strong representation, putting first people first. Enough with status quo, enough with pandering to the Indian Act. We need change in this province. The question is whether we want to go to somebody who supported Stephen Harper, who echoed his policies, his positions. Somebody who's so right-wing and so extreme that he looks down on our people. The kinds of things he said as a Canadian Alliance MP is freaky, people. We cannot support the Conservatives. And the NDP have had their chance. There's one choice in the provincial election, one choice that has the federal partner that's committed $8.4 billion to us. We need to vote Liberal on April 19th. That's it for now. Ayose.
Thanks, Tyler. That's going to be a tough act to follow. I'm Stephen Prince. Over the course of my career, I've worked with youth in the forefront. Many of my career choices have been around martial arts. It's no secret, I have been a martial artist all my life. In the 80s, I became one of the youngest black belts in Canada at the age of 8. Today, I hold 7 different black belts, and I continue treating my education to the youth, because our youth is some people that we have to mold their minds. We have to make them sharp. We got to bring their body, mind, and spirit and make them as one, because they are our future leaders. If we don't do nothing for them today and we continue squandering resources, shuffling youth that should be with their families into foster care, they have no hope. By providing them the basic lessons of martial arts, recreations, social programs, we're giving them that hope. That hope that, yes, we care about them. Yes, that there is somebody besides their parents that want to nurture them, that want to give them the opportunity to become the leaders that they are. We want to mold them. We want to make sure that we take that raw clay, we mold them into a fine piece of art, that they're the ones that are going to be leading us into the future. Because it's their voices that we have to worry about. With everything else being said and done, that's where I'm advocating for. I'm advocating for the youth. I want them to make sure that they have a future, that they have sustainable water, that they have sustainable food, that they can afford to live. With that said, I'm Stephen Prince. On April 19th, I'm your candidate for the Liberal Party in Portage Prairie. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Noel Bernier. I'm your Liberal candidate for St. John's in Winnipeg. I again want to thank the leadership for their inviting this forum, and I want to reiterate a lot of the positive comments that have gone around about all the candidates here. And actually, I was laughing outside on the way in that I'm a big fan of both my competitors, Nahani's work and Wobb's work so much. I think I begged them 100 times to be candidates for us. So I'm very, very pleased with their activism. I'm not so pleased with their politics, but I think that's normal in this world. And I think I want to challenge all of us at this table to hold each other accountable. What's at stake right now is far too great for us to politicize after April the 20th. And any one of these people that are elected, the people who are, the people who aren't, the government, we need to hold each other accountable to these ideals and not let them get pushed as a secondary agenda. There is a historical opportunity here to push this right to the forefront, and the attendance of the candidates here speaks volumes to that. Today I'm going to talk to you a bit about what the Liberal Party is proposing as far as representation, and in particular our Northern and Indigenous caucus. Traditionally, my brief experience traveling to the North as a manager in Rebecca Chartrand's campaign, I started off like many people with a lot of ideas. And apparently I can talk a lot, so I wanted to talk about those ideas. What I quickly learned is that our First Nations communities do not need to be told anymore what they need to do. They need to have partners that are willing to listen. I don't think I've listened so much in my entire life. So we put together a team, And our proposal to people is a partnership where our candidates, their job is to advocate to the party and not the other way around. They do not represent the Liberal Party to you. They represent their people inside of the Liberal Party. Today's announcement of guaranteed 10% proportional representation in our Legislative Assembly once elected is one of those historic steps forward in a new type of relationship. A new type of relationship that says at every decision we enter to the table with a partnership that wants to see our mutual benefit, that wants to see everyone move forward with success stories, not stories of regret, pain, broken promises, and failures. Again, there's too much at stake for us to waste this time and to waste this opportunity. So with that, I think I'm going to, Marcel, do you want me to introduce some of our other candidates? We literally didn't have enough candidate room at the table for the Liberal Party today. Our movement has now attracted 10 First Nations candidates and 4 Métis candidates. And some of them couldn't fit up here, so we'd like to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves as candidates as well.
In the interest of saving time, if those candidates come up here and just use this mic here, that's good.
Yeah, so Shane, Stefan, whoever wants to come up, come on up, and we'll come up at once, and then you guys can speak one at a time into the camera on the mic. Miigwech, and thank you, everyone.
Good afternoon. I want to acknowledge that I'm grateful to be invited onto Treaty 1 land and into the Métis homeland. And thank you, Grand Chief Sheila North Wilson and all the chiefs of Manitoba. I especially want to thank those chiefs that are online for allowing me onto their lands in the last several weeks. They've been more than generous in their open hearts and listening to me and challenging me on what the expectations are for the Flin Flon riding. So my riding is 70% Indigenous, and it encompasses from Flin Flon to Nunavut and over to the east side. Why the NDP government felt that that was the way to be fair representation, I'm still trying to figure that out. But what I want to tell people is that for a northern strategy that I've been asking for 8 years, and that now government is finally going to step up and think they know the answer, that they've been consulting. I've not seen anybody come to me and ask about consultation. We do not have clean drinking water. We do not have edible food. So you want to talk economic development, what the people of my riding have told me? Don't come talking to me about roads and opening up my lands until you can give me the necessities of life. And that one is drinking water. And I've listened to that, and that's what I take forward. Thank you.
My first words. Thank you, Rona Bakari. Thank you, Mr. Trudeau, for the opportunity for this Aboriginal man to stand here to talk about his rights, his place in society, where I truly belong, and how I can help my community prosper. I've been an Aboriginal man and a sustenance hunter for many years. I treat the land as I treat my family. I'm very proud and very protective. And I would just like to say, in short, that the Liberal government is giving me this opportunity to stand to be proud and participate, be a productive member of society, help my community move forward. All of these things we've always looked forward to. We've been through several prime ministers, several ministers. All say that we are equal. Today, I stand here feeling I'm equal. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Marcel, just want to interrupt there for a second. If we could get the candidates to introduce your name and your riding. The last person who spoke was Shane Lynxleg from the Swan River riding. Thank you.
I was just going to ask the time to go back so I could use this remaining time. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Elder Bone, all the candidates from different parties, ladies and gentlemen. This is quite an exciting time for all of us. My passion really is harmony, meaning that all people, all nations, be it a community, be it the province, be it the country, be it the world. Let's work together. That would be my intention to go ahead. And right now I can say the challenge of the riding that I chose, you all know it's a die-hard, a PC riding, but Lord willing, I'll take that riding and bring it to the legislature, and we'll carry on into the harmony. Why do we have to fight all the time amongst ourselves? And I just realized this afternoon we have different parties. It would be my last thought to have massive parties in our province, because there will be a whole lot of disharmony. Nobody will listen to anybody. I'm quite contented with 3 major parties. This way, at least we can keep an eye on each other, make sure we do the job that we are called for, and not worry about multiple parties that we would be worrying about. Where do we go from here? When I was young, very young, when I first learned about the government, about the parties and so forth, there were 3 major parties. And without being told, I analyzed it on my own that the PCs are for the rich, the Liberals are for all people, and TPs are for the poor. Now, I cannot go like that. If the Liberals are for the people, I am for them. Because I cannot, right now at my age, create a wealth on my own. Matter of fact, they've been in trouble with some finances. And I don't want to just be sympathetic to poor people. Oh, here's the money. You don't think you can live. No, let's give people incentives. Let's work and let's have harmony. Let's work together with smiles, with hugs and kisses. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Jones. I am running for the Liberal Party in Selkirk, Manitoba. I'm very proud to be running for the Liberal Party because I believe in it, and I believe in our people. I believe in our leader. I believe in the direction we're going. Somebody once said over here, is it a tough challenge? Absolutely, it's a tough challenge to stick your neck out and you don't know who's going to step on it, where that's going to go. But when you believe in what you're doing like we do, it's not that hard. We're talking about partnerships. We're talking about partnerships with the communities. We're talking about partnerships with our government. We believe in our leader. We believe in the federal government. We're partnering with them. And we're talking about partnering with communities. And you say, how are we going to do that? We're already doing it. If you look at every candidate here running for our party from every community across this province. And we're building on that as a teamwork. We're building our own teamwork together. We're talking to the communities. They're talking to their people. They're talking to each other. And one by one, we're going to do this. And that's what we believe in. And I believe in this party and every one of our candidates sitting here. Thank you.
Tanchikiwao, Dishnakoshan, Jordan Fleury, Almachifnia. My name is Jordan Fleury. I'm a Machif from down Riding Mountain, down the corner. St. Madeleine, Fort Ellis, traditionally. It's where my mushums and my cookums come from. So I'm in the Riding Mountain constituency. And today I'm here to follow up a little bit on the true provincial partnership, which we're going to be getting through Ms. Bokhari as well as Trudeau, the connection and the honor that's behind that, some of the commitments that we've been announcing as of late. And a big part in our area is going to be the infrastructure. So what I'm looking at as an MLA in our area is I'm willing to lobby for all our people in the area to become more inclusive. Diversity inclusion is going to be a big approach where we stand. Tying in the 1% PSD kickback for community development, infrastructure. What I'm willing to do for that is, we all know, like Tyler had mentioned, at the federal level, the inclusion isn't there when it comes to municipalities. What I'm willing to do is to go to lobby for that, to start to chisel away at the Indian Act, so we can have our First Nations communities in the area more appropriately represented and inclusive to the municipality, while holding on to the traditions and the culture and the heritage of their communities. So they become communities, recognized communities, and not just reserves. As well, speaking to the diversity and inclusion of that, we also have 4 Hutterite colonies within Riding Mountain constituency. They are a part of that plan as well, because similarly, they don't have a seat at the municipal table. However, they have a lot of leeway when it comes to trade and commerce, obviously economic development. So I know that seat is at the table. I'm willing to go to bat for all people, and that's about where we're coming from. Miigwech, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Gary Marshall, and I'm the candidate for Kildonan. Thank you very much for inviting me. I know there's a lot of problems there's problems in many communities, but especially in the northern peoples, and we've seen quite a long list of grievances. And can you hear me? Yeah. Oh, okay. I think that, there we go, okay. I think that the answers are not to be found in simply throwing large sums of money at a problem. I think it's very easy for a small group of people to make large sums of money disappear and ensure that they don't get to the people that they were meant to get to. So I always view things on a cost-benefit basis. If you're going to throw tens of thousands, millions, and even billions of dollars at a problem, you better make sure that you're going to get a decent result. And we seem to be throwing lots of money at problems, and we don't get much of a result. And that's been evident now for many years. The biggest thing for me is education. And we know that the education system has been failing the Aboriginal peoples for a long time, especially here in Winnipeg and probably elsewhere. So I think it's very important, especially for the Manitoba Party, to try to address that. And we will do everything we can to ensure that people who are ill served by our education system are given additional help, training, assistance, and sort of to bring themselves up to a certain level where they can thrive. And we also want to go into the present education system and start changing it. And I don't know how much the engineering is going to be. I'm sure it's going to be quite a lot, so that we can make those changes and we can see the peoples from the north and so on thrive at the same level as with the same opportunity as everyone else. So for me, that's a big one. There's no use training people for jobs that don't exist. And you can spend billions of dollars training people, but if there's no jobs, and the Manitoba Party advocates for massive tax cuts, and we think this will start to bring some of the businesses and the people that have long left this province back into this province. We also feel that transferring resource rights back to the owners of that property will be of great benefit from the Manitoba government to them.
Tansei. My name is Matthew Ostrove, and I'm running for Fort Rouge for the Manitoba Party. I would just like to start with a moment of silence for Belgium and what they're experiencing right now with the recent terrorist attacks. If you can all bow your heads. I'm running for the Manitoba Party as I ran for the Liberal Party in 2011 under Dr. John Gerard because I believe we have a better economic plan to grow our private sector and keep the 9,000 people who left Manitoba to come back home. My heart lies with the First Nations. I'm the president of the Winnipeg Jewish Business Council. I had a 2-hour meeting with the Aboriginal Chamber of Commerce talking about our northern plan as a chamber amongst the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce to build solar-powered geothermal greenhouses so the people of that land can have organic fruits and vegetables all year round. I would also like to see the return of cows so we don't have to subsidize milk. We can have milk locally on the land, how it used to be. I ran a lighting company for 10 years called Luco Light Systems. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm idealistic, I'm a humanitarian before I'm ever called a politician. I worked with Grand Chief Sheila North Wilson at NCI Radio, and as I told her in the hall, I saw something very special in her, and I knew this was her rite of passage, and to be honest with you, I always saw the spark in her. I fight against Monsanto for the last 3 years because they are poisoning our people. And as a candidate, I would like to see the end of Roundup being used in our farms and only use organic farming. God created this world without pesticides. We as humans are destroying it. I also am running to remove fluoride out of the water and following the state of Israel, as well as Calgary, Windsor, Ontario, and the rest of the cities in Canada and around the world who are moving towards this resolution. I am a father of a 3-year-old, and my heart goes out to the 2-year-old child who is missing at this time, and I hope to God the community can find him. When I look in my son's eyes, my biggest question is, what will he see when he is 36 in a province that we call our home? My question as I see the candidates on this panel is, where is Greg Selinger and where is Brian Pallister? Thank you, James Bedome. God bless you. You've been at every single debate. Every single one.
Good afternoon. My name is Wayne Sturby. I'm going to be representing the Manitoba Party in the constituency of Wolseley. I was born up north. After high school, I went to high school in Winnipeg. After that, I moved back up north. That's where I met my wife. For four of those years, I lived in the PAW. Part of those years, I was a teacher in the Kelsey School Division. But none of that really is important. That's background information, but it really means nothing. Today, I'm a corrections officer at Headingley Correctional Center. I'll be going for a night shift again there tonight. I've been doing that now for 6 years. And 6 years ago, my education really began when it came to the history of the Aboriginal people, the plight of the Aboriginal people. I'm running because I believe in the political process, not what we see today. What we have right now is a mess. What we have right now is a broken down system. I'm sick and tired of the complacency. I'm sick and tired of the excuses. I'm sick and tired of the attitude that this is as good as it can get. I love the passion of my young friend who is sitting here and how he spoke, and that's the kind of people that we need. People who have heart, who don't just come here to talk about how we're going to spend money and how we're going to do this, but people who are actually committed to getting the hard work done. I want to share with you a little bit about two political leaders, and I hope that the reason I chose these two will become clear. First of all, knowledge of the past is the only foundation we have from which to peer into and measure the future. Expert knowledge, however indispensable, is no substitute for a generous and comprehending outlook upon the whole human story, with all of its sadness and with all of its unquenchable hope. Working at Heading Correctional Center, I have had the opportunity of hearing story after story after story of sadness and tragedy. You know, we talk about the young people right now who are in CFS and just how heartbreaking that is. There is a segment of the society that is currently locked up, and almost everybody has written them off. And I, for one, do not write them off. I have heard the stories of sadness, but I believe in the unquenchable hope. And when I go to work, I try to pass on that hope to them. I talk to those young Aboriginal people about great leaders from their past. Men like Chief Sitting Bull. You know, years ago, he visited Canada, and a Northwest Mounted Police officer said these words about him. He was courageous to a fault. His words were weighty. In counsel, he was unmatched. I challenge those young men in custody today to learn from the stories of history and to become the great leaders that God intended them to be. If I get elected, I promise you, I will work hard to make good things happen. Thank you.
Hello. 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 I'd like to thank everybody for allowing me to speak here today. My name is Jason Wiebe. I am representing the Manitoba Party in the riding of St. Boniface. My background is construction. I've been in construction my entire life. I was born into it. I've been to a lot of big, large projects, especially ones run by Manitoba Hydro. I spent a year up at Kiosk. I was witness to many, for lack of a better term, how they treated the Indigenous people up there. A lot of them are good, close friends of mine now. And a lot of them got mistreated and were run off the job site for absolutely no reason whatsoever other than the fact that the company that was hired to do the job was allowed to do it. Manitoba Hydro didn't stand behind anybody. They didn't even, it was beyond frustrating when I was up there. When I did decide to open up my mouth, and a few of us did, about what was going on, Manitoba Hydro and the contractor all of a sudden came after us. And it got so bad that I actually resigned from the project. Right now I'm speaking to you because I don't believe for a second that there's 50% Indigenous people working on that project. When I was up there, there wasn't. I know that for a fact. And I'm also curious, we've never heard of what's the percentage of Indigenous people working on Bipole project right now? I have a lot of friends working there, and they tell me that's few and far between from what they see. So I'm inclined to believe them. I'm also interested in the environmental damage being done up at Kiosk because Manitoba Hydro is allowing the contractor to use not even the best materials for their explosives, and it's leaking into the Neslin River. And that was proven. I saw the reports. And obviously they haven't been released because they don't want them to be seen. Manitoba Hydro makes billions of dollars up north every year. And I don't understand why they continue to lie to the Indigenous people up there and break all their promises and their agreements on what they should be paying out. To this day, I don't understand that. And where are all the benefits and perks that are promised to the Indigenous people up north? When I was up there, I spent quite a few years up there, and I never saw any or heard of any. And I just don't understand, and nothing is ever coming out to the public. And well, I kind of know why a little bit, because I've seen it. And that's pretty much all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. Are there any other candidates in the room? Holy, that's a lot of candidates. Thank you very much. I have an expression of interest from Chief Sheldon Kent to say a few words. If you would like to approach the microphone. Chief Michael Yellowback, you're on deck.
Maybe I'll come there. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. First, I want to acknowledge our Harry Boone for the prayer this afternoon. I want to commend the candidates for coming here this afternoon to come and share your perspective and pitch your sales pitch. Why we should vote for you. Why should Manitobans vote for your particular parties? It takes strength and courage to get up and do that. I want to acknowledge that. But I have specific questions, but as you can see, my eye's a little bit, this eye, I took an injury playing hockey with our youth. A stick went in there and popped it. I have specific questions, but Marcel's going to ask those questions for me. But I just wanted to bring greetings from my community, from Black River, Treaty 5. We're the most southern Treaty 5 community. Acknowledge that we're on the unceded territory of Treaty 1. That's where we're at. And I want to acknowledge them for allowing us to come to their territory all the time and have meetings and gatherings. But I want to encourage each of the candidates. Your comments were all good. Your heart's in the right place. Whoever forms government, you need to work with us as Anishinaabe people from Manitoba. You got to get rid of this. I like the young man's comments there from Norway House. I'm not good with names, but I went to his community. I like the way he spoke about getting rid of the borders, the federal and provincial jurisdictions, because that's a big issue that comes to play a lot of times in today's society. The province won't come to our reservations to come and help build new infrastructure programs, and yet when the federal government does the federal transfer dollars, they advocate to us to make sure all our people are accounted for, because all those numbers collectively make up those envelopes that the provincial government receives on behalf of all Manitobans, not just First Nations people, but we're not receiving our share end. Black River to date, every year since I've had the opportunity to be chief in Black River, I was first elected in '97. We received $12,000 from the provincial government every year based on our population. That's not fair, because there's billions of dollars that the province receives. We need to start working together in a collective manner to make true change. We talk about all these deplorable conditions, the poverty, all our children in care. You got to remember when the European settlers came here, their first goal was to extinguish us, get rid of us Anishinaabe people. But you know what? You're not going to get rid of us. We're going to be here forever. We got to work together collectively. And if we don't, things are going to get worse. But we have an opportunity. My message to the candidates, I know that the Green Party leader is here. Kudos for you for coming out. Eric Robinson's the deputy premier, almost appointing you to prime minister already, Eric. He's somebody I grew up watching as a politician when they're going through. But my message is we got to work together. You know that in Manitoba, Ontario, and Saskatchewan, our members can go to any store off reserve and present our status card, and then they don't charge our people taxes. But Manitoba still makes us all, I don't know what the difference is. By a stroke of a pen, I believe your Minister of Finance could change that and then honor and respect our treaty values. Let us go shop. That little difference will make a big difference if you let them don't pay the taxes. They do that in Saskatchewan, Ontario. Manitoba has to catch up and join the rest of the other provinces. I know we can criticize, but my message is the opportunity is here. We got to work together. And Marcel will offer our specific questions. They're related to the environment for sure. We're very concerned with this Lake Winnipeg and the damage, because if we don't start taking care of our environment, what are we going to leave for our unborn children, our future children, like 5 generations ahead? If we don't make changes and start taking care of it, they're not going to have anything. We have to come together and work with each other. So that's my message. Meigwich, thanks for listening to me.
Excellent. So we got the timer for 2 minutes. Each party, I guess, to be fair, has an opportunity to respond. You choose amongst yourself who you want to speak to a particular question. That makes sense? There were some questions here, however, that were pointed to a particular party first. I've only got 5 here, I think. Huh? After the, yeah, I'm aware of that. Okay. Thank you. I got one question specifically for PC and NDP, I think. I'll just read it out. For PC, Progressive Conservatives, we understand that Brian Pallister will support the Channel Diversion Project. How do you plan on addressing First Nations that may lose land from the Channel Diversion Project? And then combined with that question to the NDP, will the NDP support the channel diversion? The other questions, I think, are for all the candidates. A representative from the PCs.
Thank you very much. Our party has certainly been asking a lot of questions of the government about this and the lack of progress on that. I believe that we have made a very strong commitment that it would be a priority, should we form government, to move forward on addressing that issue. We have heard from a lot of people affected by it, and it is going to be one of our priorities as soon as we form government, should that happen.
Thank you. And the NDP, will the NDP support the channel diversion?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, when we did the emergency channel, it was upon the recommendation of the then chief of the Dauphin River First Nation, and together with the other 3 chiefs on the east side of the Lake Manitoba flood control structure, it was upon their recommendation and upon their insistence is why we built the emergency channel. The emergency channel will only proceed on the basis of Section 35 considerations, and of course the proper due diligence is done, the duty to consult, those other issues. On the issue of evacuees, as you know, the communities are at different stages of going back home to their communities. It's a process that's taking long. It's a process that the federal government has been engaged in. It's an issue that the provincial government has been engaged in as well. But the ultimate goal and the chiefs of those communities on the east side of the flood control structure on Lake Manitoba is to have their people back in their homelands as quickly as possible. And the work is proceeding, and like I said, various stages of negotiations are currently in place with all 4 communities.
Thank you. For all the candidates, Manitoba Hydro has a mandate to support and buy surplus power from Manitobans, such as farms and communities that can generate surplus power from their operations. However, in everyday practice, Manitoba Hydro has the final authority to determine the purchase price. Manitoba Hydro uses their authority to deny sales based upon claims that the power is, quote, dirty or, quote, unstable, which is contrary to scientific fact. Will you amend the relevant legislation, A, to remove Manitoba Hydro's monopoly over the determination of price to enable development of community-based power generation, and B, to establish a fair system that promotes the development of local power generation? Whew. I can start maybe with somebody who raised their hand, so let's start at the end over there.
Might as well work our way down. I think this is a great question and a really important question. It's absolutely fundamental that we move forward with different ways of producing power. Former candidate before me in Fort Garry Riverview, Vera Scott, who's sadly passed, explained it this way. You know, you give a hammer a screw, it doesn't know what to do with it. And what I'm saying is Manitoba Hydro is entirely focused on building dams and doesn't have the capacity to look at other alternative forms of generation. We need more wind, we need more solar. And I should note that the NDP government in 2002 promised 1,000 megawatts of wind energy across Manitoba. They delivered 258 and have given up on that target for 2012. Some of those projects actually were going to be on reserve. I believe Chief Morris Shanakapo was very interested in the potential of creating wind turbines for his people and for economic development. So without a doubt, one of the things that's holding up these projects, because we had more than 1,000 megawatts licensed, is that they're not getting adequate power purchase agreements from Manitoba Hydro. So we absolutely need to do that. To be fair, Hydro has moved a little bit over the past few years at allowing small microgeneration, but we're not nearly capturing the potential that we could have in terms of having people produce their own power. I also want to note remote communities like Shamattawa that still are on diesel generators, have been for years, pay more money, and that, once again, promises of solar and or wind power to help out those communities haven't been realized on. So we absolutely have to allow more community-based power. We have to amend the legislation. Really, when we look at it, and we're seeing it in the developing world, the old centralized model of mega power producing plants, I think, is going to be quickly replaced by a decentralized model where we're producing the power much closer to where we are. And I think we need to be leaders on that, because I think it creates a lot of opportunities for economic development. And sadly, this current government has really missed the boat on that. And I think your only option to create that is to vote Green. Thank you.
Awesome. Next, Liberals, there. Do you want to go down? Because I know you had indicated you want to go. We can go down the line, sure.
Well, I think the NDP have missed the boat largely on everything about hydro, is certainly what we've seen. They have politically interfered with a lot of hydro decisions. The direction of the bipole has been probably one of the biggest boondoggles we've ever seen. They've ignored the experts from hydro that have indicated the opposite to what the NDP are doing. I think it's time that hydro was treated as the crown jewel that it is, and that it not be interfered with for political reasons. I think there's going to have to be a major refocusing of how hydro does business in this province, and we have to listen to the experts that are there at hydro to make these kind of recommendations and justifications to government. It is also very offensive, I think, to a lot of people that hydro is being sold at a much lower price to Americans, and we are subsidizing that here in Manitoba. That is really not fair to Manitobans, and it's particularly not fair to those that struggle to make ends meet. So there's going to have to be a whole revisit of how hydro does business in Manitoba.
Let me take this opportunity by saying that, with all due respect, I think that what we have done with hydro development in the province of Manitoba, first of all, we have conducted the partnership arrangements where the power comes from in the first place. And that's with the communities of Fox Lake, York Landing, War Lake, and Tatasquia Cree Nation. We have to get their consent prior to us proceeding. On the issue of the bipole routing, that wasn't up to us. It was in fact up to the people, the land users, the trappers, the elders that live on the east side of the province of Manitoba that said they did not want a power line down the east side of the province of Manitoba through their traditional territories. We listened to that advice, then we moved that line over to the west side. There was never any political interference. A thorough consultation process has occurred with landowners. At one point, there was some people that me, of all people, insisted that I was stealing land. Can you imagine that, Marcel? Me, Eric Robinson, stealing land, of all people, from the landowners, when in fact the opposite was true, that a thorough consultation phase was taken place. 150% land value of landowners was given to them, in addition to ongoing use of that land for farming activity. So I believe that hydro, in their defense, has been more than fair, and I reject any notion that the government has interfered in hydro's business in its dealings in this consultation work it's doing with Manitobans.
Thank you. There is 2 questions, but the next party.
First of all, I heard the terms crown jewel used, and the question's really about breaking up the monopoly of Manitoba Hydro. If we get back to the question, the Liberal Party is absolutely not interested in tampering with one of these most prized crown assets we have in Manitoba Hydro. However, what we notice is there's a disparity about what that crown jewel, I think as my peer put it, feels like. Because it feels like a crown jewel to everyone who doesn't live in the backyard of where their hydro is getting electricity. And what we need to do is we need to have a hydro board, and we need to have a mandate for Manitoba Hydro that makes every citizen, including the people of the north where this revenue comes from, proud of Manitoba Hydro. And we're going to definitely take action to have accountability at Manitoba Hydro and to avoid the politicizing of their decisions. While I accept my peer's comment and the Honourable Eric Robbins' comment on how they reject any notions of this government tampering or politicizing Manitoba Hydro, there isn't a single person in the north that I know that believes that. And it's time for a hydro board that represents all of Manitoba and a Manitoba Hydro that is strong for all Manitobans. Thank you.
Just remembering the 2 questions that are there is talking about Manitoba Hydro's monopoly that prevents community-based power generation and also a potential fair system that promotes the development of local power generation. Next.
Hi, I'm with the Manitoba Party. I'll just give I think we're all very much aware here of how impartial and fair the process is in gaining consent from local peoples as to the development of projects. It's quite interesting how it's done, and it's quite a system. Anyway, onto the issue of hydro. What is the purpose in dumping tons of cement up into northern river systems, flooding lands, disturbing all that territory, and running huge transmission lines all the way down to Winnipeg and beyond, right? And all the transmission losses, when you can just put in a gas-fired generator right next to the city and send the power south that way, or distribute it. I've never quite understood that, and nobody's really been able to explain it to me. The crown jewel is billions of dollars in debt, and it's piling up at a dramatic rate. And that company, I think, is pretty much going to be done soon enough. So this monopoly, this crown jewel, is going to have to go because it's costing us far too much. And sooner or later, they're going to transfer that debt from Manitoba Hydro to the public, to the taxpayers. So we favor opening up energy development to all sorts of competitors, rivals, and especially in the local communities. So whatever they can do to generate their power, and if they can, with some cost-benefit analysis, transfer it to others, fine. If not, well, I guess they'll have to find another way.
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot. I wasn't counting parties. Question number 3. Will your party, if elected, support revenue-sharing agreements with all First Nations who are affected by Lake Winnipeg watershed regulation, flood protection, and hydroelectric development? Do you want to start? Do you want to start on this end and then go that way?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Will your party, if elected, support revenue-sharing agreements with all First Nations who are affected by Lake Winnipeg watershed regulation, flood protection, and hydroelectric development?
Well, as I say, the project, what we favor is transferring resource mineral rights to the property owners from the Manitoba government. So if you own the property, you should be able to develop it in whatever way you wish. So when you say revenue sharing, I think that we're more interested in having the people who live on these properties, who live on these lands, develop their own resources, and get rid of the monopolies. So if it's fisheries, if it's electricity production, if it's anything, I think we will give them the tools to create their own businesses, their own industries. And one is transfer of mineral resource rights. One is to get rid of the monopolies and to get rid of the massive regulations and red tape that prevent people from developing their resources.
Thank you.
Can you read the question over again? Just to clarify.
Will your party, if elected, support revenue sharing agreements with all First Nations who are affected by Lake Winnipeg watershed regulation, flood protection, and hydroelectric development?
Okay, so I think I've got to answer that question a little more from a broader scope. The question is really about resources and sharing them. And at the Manitoba Liberal Party, we're absolutely committed to sharing our resources and our financial resources with our First Nations partners. And we're also committed to a relationship that does not use the Indian Act as an ally to say not our jurisdiction, not our responsibility. There is no more clear announcement to this than we recently did at an AMC meeting, where we are going to have First Nations participate in our PST rebate that we offer to municipalities. It's about sending upwards of $30 million directly to First Nations communities to make decisions on their own infrastructure, to make decisions on what they need in their community. And it's about us having, again, breaking down the walls of systematic racism that say if you're the RM of such, you get money, and if you're the First Nation here, you don't. And so we have to talk about revenue sharing in a broader scope rather than these particular policy announcements. And we have to look at a partnership that says that we're going to treat our First Nations partners exactly as that. So to date, we've announced a number of policies, whether it's our involvement in housing or more particularly the sharing of the PST rebate that we've offered to municipalities in the city of Winnipeg. We are going to make every First Nation in Manitoba and northern communities eligible on a pro rata basis. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. As my colleagues up here know, we have 4 diesel-generated communities in the province of Manitoba: Tadouli Lake, Lac Brochet, Brochet, and Chez Marois. And these communities, we've been engaged in dialogue with them on seeking alternative energy sources. I think that eventually we have to work with the federal government in having a landline to these communities, because I don't think diesel energy is the answer to the future in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, etc. The other issue I want to raise is the Hydro Board, in fact, has 4 very capable Indigenous peoples. That include Tina Keeper, Chief David Crate. Very recently, we appointed Linda Ballantyne from Mississippi Cree Nation, and we have another, and the name escapes me, but a very capable person on a Hydro Board. So this, again, the Hydro Board, much like all of us here, are the face of the province of Manitoba. The United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples also points out that we have to consider revenue sharing, and that is part of our Path to Reconciliation Bill 18 that was passed unanimously. We took a standing vote there, 53-0 on that vote to adopt our new bill, and Mrs. Dreger and I were very proud to support Bill number 18, when we stood up in the Manitoba legislature as members of the legislature. On the issue of revenue sharing, absolutely. Through the water power rental agreement, we already have a cost-shared arrangement with First Nations in the province of Manitoba.
Thank you very much. We have certainly already made a commitment in terms of duty to consult. During those consultations and during the development of a Northern strategy, the discussions of revenue sharing, I'm sure, will be discussed at the table. It is imperative that we do look at opportunities for further economic development and move that forward. Right at this time, it's really hard to say exactly where things will end up because we do not know how big the debt hole is going to be should we form government and inherit the significant deficit and debt that has been created in this province. And until we know where those numbers are accurately, it's really hard to make any solid commitments about that right now. But certainly we know that we need to do more in terms of economic development and have more of those conversations with Indigenous communities.
All right, so absolutely, yes. I really want to appreciate this question. Actually, Marcel, I left it under there. I brought a copy of the Lake Winnipeg CEC recommendations report. I note that was released in October, and we haven't seen those recommendations implemented by this government. It's a long-standing position of the Green Party of Manitoba that we should put a pause on building new hydroelectric dams until we deal with the past legacy of hydro dams. So we've got Lake Winnipeg regulation, one of the largest hydroelectric reservoirs in the world. We've got the diversion of 80% of the Churchill River into the Nelson River. These are huge changes, and it goes to the question of it deals with flood, has flood impacts on communities, not just the communities moving up the Nelson, but also the communities on the Winnipeg River as well. And so I think it's really important that we recognize that. Absolutely, the promise, the idea for those communities that were initial signatories to the Northern Flood Agreement, once again noting that there were other communities that are impacted as well, and that should be acknowledged. They absolutely need revenue sharing. We absolutely need to take a look at the impacts in terms of flood protection for these communities. Certainly, when we build up Lake Winnipeg in the fall, what impact does that have for cabin owners on the east side, for shoreline erosion, for the communities on the east side, in terms of flooding impact, in terms of protection of wildlife? I wanted to just address a couple other points and use the few seconds that I have. I really take offense to Eric Robinson's comment that, building Bipole 3 on the west side was all about protecting hunters and trappers, and I'm not saying there isn't some dynamics of that, but that forgets that there's hunters and trappers on the west side of this province, and I really take offense to that, and I thought that needed to be said.
Thank you. Question number 4. Will your government, if you get elected in, support the creation of a First Nation commercial fishery so our fishermen can sell their fish domestically and abroad?
Could you repeat the question again?
If you get elected, will you support the creation of a First Nation commercial fishery so our fishermen can sell their fish domestically and abroad? Who would like to take a stab at that?
Go back the same thing we did before? Yeah, certainly. I think I'd support it. I know one of the big things right now with the Lake Winnipeg fishery is we have to look towards eco-certification. So I think in tandem with First Nations people, we could certainly find a way towards moving towards eco-certification. And that's important because major retailers are not going to be carrying our fish product necessarily unless we get that ecological certification. So I see no reason why we couldn't work with Indigenous people. We've certainly seen some recent court decisions that have certainly opened the door on that. And I think we absolutely need that. Not only is hunting and fishing a treaty right, but it's also a great opportunity for Indigenous people in terms of job creation.
I'll take a try at this. Since I grew up in the fish camp, my dad was a fisherman, and that's how we survived. A lot of people in our communities too were fishermen, and you know what, I don't know what happened, why we sort of lost that. And I definitely would would support that. I was just in Poplar River, and they have the fisheries there. You know, and I know my dad, they fished all year round, but there I think they just do it in the spring and the fall. I'm not quite sure, because when I was there, they weren't doing any fishing. And I think we do, we get fish from across the border, from, you know, and I think our fish is the best in the world, so yeah, definitely I would support that.
I want to thank your question because, thank you for the question rather. This whole issue will need a lot of consultation, obviously. It's going to depend on what the commercial fishers have to say about this. I mean, there are people, as we know, the Freshwater Fish Marketing Corporation does have the monopoly in the province of Manitoba. There are some in the Island Lake region, as you know, that have opted out of the Freshwater Fish Marketing Corporation. And there has been struggles in terms of transportation to get the fish to market. That's been challenging. Some of the fishers at Wasagamok, St. Teresa Point, and Garden Hill have been quite successful in the work that they're doing. But getting the fish to Red Lake, as an example, has been challenging with the transportation costs that are required. So I think that it'll require a thorough consultation, and we must not forget that fisheries, 85% of the fishers on Lake Winnipeg are First Nations people. So this also has to be remembered, that fishing indeed is a First Nations right. It's a treaty right. So we should never deviate from that notion. The matter has to be obviously discussed in greater detail. This never has been raised with us as a government as being a major issue, but indeed I think that it's one that's worthy of discussion.
My turn to take a jab at the question without freaking out. No, for myself, coming from Norway House, the commercial fishery is a lifestyle. People live off this. I have friends, I have relatives that depend on this to live. They depend on the fishery for survival, to get by. For that reason, myself as a candidate and the Liberal Party is absolutely committed to supporting, upholding, and defending fishery as a lifestyle. That being said, we are looking at and willing to support looking at raw fish in the international market, what that could bring to the fishery, what that could bring to our province. But that being said, let me reiterate that we will stand by fishing as a lifestyle. And never, ever, ever will I tolerate or allow somebody to infringe on the lifestyle of so many of my people, my brothers and my sisters in Norway House. Thank you.
The Manitoba Party believes in small government and without government intrusion. We believe in removing the monopoly system that is there. Our return of resources and mineral rights back to the people would cover this, because then you'd be able to do whatever you want to do with the fish. Now, it's interesting that this came up because about 11 years ago, I was working in Russia with some Russian businessmen who wanted to come here to purchase freshwater fish. But we ran into a problem. I was working with some of the Métis fishermen. We ran into a problem, the fisheries board. And so we would get rid of that fisheries board. We would allow the fishermen to sell their product on the open market. And in fact, we would even help them go internationally, because there's a lot of international markets out there that would love to use our fish. Thank you.
Thank you. final question. Systemic racism is at the heart of the hatred that exists in Manitoba. It has been perceived as built-in genocide. What financial steps will you commit to ensure your government puts an immediate stop to all forms of racism within your government institutions, departments, and crown corporations, including placing First Nation people in decision-making positions to protect environmental and economic interests in Lake Winnipeg watershed?
Was that two questions?
Yes.
Sort of,
Yes,
yeah.
two.
I'll repeat
Can
the
you give me
question.
the first question?
What financial steps will you commit to ensure your government puts an immediate stop to all forms of racism within your government institutions, departments, and crown corporations, including placing First Nation people in decision-making positions to protect environmental and economic interests in Lake Winnipeg watershed?
Yeah, it's a very big question. There is racism, we know there is, but I don't think, you know, when you give people equality of opportunity, when you give them the same educational resources that you give to others, when they have the same abilities as others, I think that racism will die away. It will perish eventually, because if you have somebody who's willing to do a job for you at a certain price, and you choose, because of some physical trait, to go to another person who charges more because of some, well, eventually you're going to lose because you're making yourself uncompetitive. So I think we favor a system where you're free to charge what you like, and that will slowly address the issue of racism. I don't think you can legislate it away. I don't think you can invoke all sorts of programs and so on. I think it has to be done. And I think the best way is less government and a better education system.
Thank you.
First of all, while I respect my peers' comments, it's absolutely ridiculous to think that you can just ignore racism and it will go away through economic vices or on its own. It is absolutely ridiculous. This is the key part of the Liberal platform, but it's given in much broader strokes. And I want to, in my short time here, narrow it down to a couple of very important things. First of all, the Liberal Party of Manitoba actually believes that when there's good ideas that come from other people, that they're good ideas. We're not ideologically based, and one of the things that I know that our peers to the left here have announced is training within government departments to improve and break down those systematic racism. We support that 100%. And I'm looking at Althea as I speak right now. And Althea has advocated how critical this is to building a better relationship with our frontline services. However, the Manitoba Liberals are taking this to a higher level. When we talk about breaking down systematic racism, we talk about the type of policy announcements that say a citizen is a citizen is a citizen. And nothing could speak louder than that, than we talk about getting away with the jurisdictional battles of the past and dealing with our First Nations partners as equal citizens. And at the highest level, when we talk about breaking down systematic racism, our commitment today to 10% of our elected representatives being reserved for Indigenous representation, that's not a maximum, it's a minimum, is our strongest signal to say that we break down systematic racism from both the bottom and the top. And to leave it handle itself is socially irresponsible.
I would say that racism won't disappear by accident, because racism has been used systematically throughout the history of this country to hold First Nations people down. Racism was used to justify the removal and theft of our lands and resources, And then it was used to justify the removal of Indigenous children from our families throughout the residential school era. And in many ways, it is baked into the structure of Confederation. The only way that you can tackle systemic racism is by getting into the powers that be in this country and pulling back the divisions that separate a First Nations person, a Métis person, or an Inuit person from everyone else in this country. So what does that look like in practice? Well, it means supporting a national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women so that there can be an independent examination of what the barriers are in the justice system, in the child welfare system, in the various systems that exist to perpetuate the poverty on reserve. And you have one of the most strong and strident activists in that field seated right here to my right. And she's so humble that she didn't want to take the credit for that. It continues to changing the way education is delivered in this country. That's why we need mandated Indigenous content from K to 12, which has been enacted by our colleagues in the Ledge, at the post-secondary level, and finally in the workforce through mandating the training of public sector employees. And finally, for me, the final frontier will be in health. The reason that I'm getting into this, a big reason, is because my father was denied coverage for cancer care because he was a First Nations man, even though he lived in the city of Winnipeg. I promise you, I will work tirelessly to ensure that Jordan's principle becomes law in this province if I am elected.
Thank you.
I would like to say that Jordan's principle has been adopted in the Manitoba legislature. It was put forward by my progressive conservative colleague, and it was supported by all parties. So that is already something that we in Manitoba, as legislators, unanimously agreed to. And
Moderator, if there's a chance for redirection, we would like a chance for redirection from all people.
This is a forum to ask and answer questions.
Thank you. That resolution was passed not that long ago, and it is a commitment that all of us have supported. I would also indicate that we do all have to recognize that there is racism. We all have a responsibility in addressing it. It does start within ourselves. I am very honored that we have 5 First Nations candidates in our party, and they are very, very strong candidates that take this issue very seriously. It is something our leader takes very seriously. He has fought very, very hard for property rights for Aboriginal women, and that was passed by the federal government. We do know that 55% of Aboriginal kids, or that's the graduation rate for Aboriginal children. So there is a lot of work to do, and a lot of it does center around education, and I agree with healthcare too. And in northern Manitoba, we have the worst child poverty rate and unemployment rate in Canada, so we do have to do a better job in all of those areas.
Okay, the first thing I want to say is racism's a reality, and it's something that we have to confront. And I'm going to talk a bit about the funding part of the question, but I think first and foremost what any elected official can do, and what I think anyone up here could do, and I want to acknowledge people like Oscar Laughlin who have been that champion. When you're an elected official, you're a leader. And the one thing I can promise is I will stand out and call out racism when I see it and where I see it, and it absolutely needs to be done. And that's why I wanted to acknowledge the work of the late Oscar Laughlin, who called it out a few years ago. Because it's embedded. It's permeated throughout our society, and it's embedded in aspects like poverty. So I talked a little bit about our guaranteed annual income proposal, which we're reallocating a number of tax credits, would deal a lot with poverty, because if we don't deal with poverty, that's one of the factors that's holding Indigenous people down. 1 out of 3 children in Manitoba live below the low income cutoff line, but it's 40% if you're talking about Indigenous children living off reserve, and even higher if you're talking about Indigenous children living on reserve. So to talk about equality of educational outcomes or any other number of factors, we can't do that until we start addressing poverty first and foremost. We also need things like education. In the education system, we need to incorporate racism and the history of our First Peoples into the curriculum. And some of that's been done, but more can be done. Cultural training for government workers, both frontline workers and decision making. Support for community groups like Aboriginal Youth Opportunities, Bell Tower. I mean, a lot of these groups are already doing the work on the ground, and we need to give them credit for that. Now, the second part of the question, I'm not sure anyone had a chance to answer, which is First Nations people in the decision-making roles to protect Lake Winnipeg. Absolutely. We need the decision makers making the decisions. There's so much that we can learn in terms of ecological protection from First Peoples. We just have to stop and listen and learn. And so we're not going to do that until we put First Nations people in the major decision-making roles, not just about protecting Lake Winnipeg, but I think about a number of the environmental decisions that we make in this province. Thank you.
Thank you. So the opportunity for folks to be able to make questions, I see that Chief Yellowpack had to leave. Feel free to indicate your interest, but since there was an interest on Jordan's principle, and that's one of the main things that the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs has advocated for, and it's related to the recent Canadian Human Rights Tribunal that found that Child and Family Services on reserve was discriminatory and ordered Canada not only to reform the First Nation Child and Family Services program, but also to fully implement the full meaning and scope of Jordan's principle. And in the 2012 provincial budget, it was announced that the province would provide free oral cancer care drugs for all patients in Manitoba, regardless of residency. However, from a First Nation perspective, this has not been the experience of Manitoba First Nations, who still face jurisdictional quagmires with Health Canada's coverage, which in turn negatively compromises their treatment and ultimate health outcomes. Let's go around on what would your party do to fully implement and give meaning to the Jordan's principle?
Well, that's a great question. We absolutely have to implement it, not just on health, but you noted child and family services, education as well. At the end of the day, it's going to require the province being willing to move first, pay for services, and then, I guess, hound the federal government to pay afterwards. I think really, I'd like to sort of give kudos to the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, though, that recently called for a complete overhaul and basically getting rid of the Indian Act, because I think that's part of it, but it has to come from Indigenous peoples themselves. It has to come from the ground up. Too many times when we've, federally at least, amended the Indian Act, whether Bill C-35 in 1985 or the 1957 amendments or the more recent 2012 amendments with former Prime Minister Harper, that basically they weren't consulting with Indigenous people. It has to come from the ground up. So I think it starts with really coming up with a new model, and I don't have all the answers for that. I don't think anyone does, but it starts with consulting with Indigenous people and coming up with a new model so that we quit running into these jurisdictional quagmires time and time again, whether it's acceptance for a certain drug on health care, whether it's providing care to a medical patient that needs it, whether it's making sure that, on-reserve funding for education is half the level that provincial funding is, whether it's the fact that Child and Family Services get 22% less funding federally than on average than they do provincially. It's all of those aspects, and it's moving first and equalizing the funding so that we don't have these problems anymore.
I think this is an incredibly important issue, and what has not happened since that resolution was approved in the legislature is really there have been no processes put into place in order to move it forward. So I think one of the things that probably needs to happen is some kind of a mechanism that we can actually properly look at this issue and then identify the various ways that this can be moved forward. It is a very complex issue, and I do know that there are members in the, within Health Canada that are in particular very interested in helping to flesh some of this out. So I think there is an openness out there for discussions to happen and for some processes to be put in place to figure out how can we properly do this.
Well, I appreciate the question because it actually gets down to one of my primary motivations behind getting involved with the Manitoba NDP. I do believe that the NDP government has done a lot of good. So, for instance, first provincial government to build dialysis stations on reserve. Also, the cancer drug program that was alluded to, it's the first in the country. It's the first time that provincial government provided full coverage for the oral cancer drugs. And so to me, that is a strong legacy. It is a progressive legacy. And yet, as I was alluding to earlier, my life experience tells me that that legacy is incomplete. Because my father was diagnosed with cancer. Living in Winnipeg, he should have been eligible for that program. But because he was covered by NIHB through the federal government, he was denied the cancer drugs. Now, our family has resources. We could have gone ahead and purchased the drugs anyways, but he decided not to. He made a choice based on quality of life. He wanted to feel better for the remaining time that he had rather than taking that drug. But it forced me to ask the question, why is it still the reality in 2012 to today, 2016, that First Nations people in this country still have to ask if their life outcomes might be different if the Indian Act wasn't in place and if the federal-provincial relationship could be better. And so Jordan's Principle was passed in the Ledge as a resolution, but we have to be honest and say that it is still not the reality. And what we'll take to build that reality is a strong partnership with the federal government. I know the Prime Minister, I have a lot of respect for him, so that relationship I think is there now. But we also need a strong provincial government here in place that understands the mechanisms and the details of how to carry out the implementation of properly interfacing the federal and provincial health systems.
Thank you.
So when you look at Jordan's Principle or child welfare, you really need to look at the partnerships federally and provincially. And that is why I joined the Manitoba Liberal Party, because we are ensuring that we have a positive and strong partnership with our federal government, and that we are bringing these issues to the forefront when it comes to our children. And currently, the way that the child welfare or Jordan's Principle or any bills that pertain to this important issue, you got to look at the governing of the current structure. And this is something that has had just small incremental changes, and this is something that needs to be addressed now and today. So when you look at those partnerships and when you look at pushing forward the idea that our children come first because they're the most vulnerable people within society, we need to make sure that we are pushing forward the agenda to make sure that all of our children and all Manitobans are well taken care of. So when you look at the partnerships, that is something that we are focusing on, the federal and provincial, and making sure that our Indigenous people are being heard, because we as Indigenous people, we have the answers and we have the solutions. It's just you need a government that is willing to listen to us. And the Manitoba Liberal Party is committed to listening to Indigenous peoples. Miigwech.
Like I said before, when I gave my speech there before, the Manitoba Party believes that anyone who's a resident of Manitoba deserves to be treated like a resident of Manitoba. There's no jurisdiction on who's responsible. We are the government. We take responsibility. If a First Nations person needs medicine, they get the medicine just like every other Manitoba resident. So that's all I have to say on this. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. We've got a microphone going to a table over there, which is number 1. Number 2 over there, and then number 3 over there.
Thank you. My name is Lawrence Cochran. I'm originally from Fisher Bay. It's a Métis settlement further back to Fisher River. But that's beside the point. I have some questions relating to child welfare and the justice system for the Aboriginal people. Well, one for the child welfare is that most of our children is taken away as soon as we're born. I have relatives that every time they have a child, as soon as they're born, they're taken from us. Also as well, I also have some relatives too that when they're involved with the law, they get sentenced more than the refugees or any other race that's when they commit a crime. And also as well, the health issues. Like, take for example, up north. I've noticed that on the news, like I get all my information from the news and watching Channel 5 or Channel 9. I guess you know that when you go to a store up north, the laundry soap is about $21, $26, and maybe carrots are about $10, $15. And our race, Aboriginal people, and mostly Aboriginal people, we're in the poverty line, below the poverty line. So how can we afford to pay $15, $16 for groceries and laundry soap, since they're way up? I'm sure people come to Winnipeg just to buy some things, but yet it's going to cost them gas. So the ones that we elect, is there any way that the price could go down instead of keeping the same when they come into Winnipeg? That would kind of do away with the poverty and the health issue. That's mostly my questions, really. Whoever answers them, well, I'm sure Eric Robinson can answer some. That'll be it. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, for me, I couldn't hear everything because the sound was a little bit muffled. Could you please repeat the question? Was that directed to Eric or?
Well, anyone that could answer. Well, I know Eric is on is one of the MPs for the up north. But like the questions was that child welfare is that our children is taken from us as soon as we're born. And the justice system, the Aboriginal people, is sentenced more harsher than any other people. And also as well, the health issue is the price, what we have to pay when people that's living up north. If that price could go down, so they wouldn't have to come into Winnipeg to shop.
Okay. I'll give it a try, Eric.
Who's that question to? Is that
Everyone?
to
Oh, okay.
everyone,
Pardon?
was that question to everyone?
Is that question to everybody?
Well, if you can answer it in a good way, I'm sure we would. Even myself, I'd like to know who to vote for.
Okay.
Either Eric again or.
That's fair enough. Very good.
Sorry, I'm just going to quickly clarify that there are two questions that I think I heard. It. One was what we're going to do with child welfare. The other question is what are we going to do with the high price of food up north. Is that an accurate?
Yeah, that's.
And justice as well.
And the other one is the prices we have to pay people up north because they're very high. You know, when you come to Winnipeg, that they tell us, well, how much is laundry soap? And they say it was about $30, $26, and I'm sure, I'm surprised to hear that price.
Okay.
And I'm sure you are too.
So I'll deal with the food issue first. Our party is in favor of what they've done in Mexico as well as some Scandinavian countries, which is sometimes known as a junk food tax. But the idea is across all of Manitoba, we would place a surcharge on sugary drinks, unhealthy food, use that money for preventative medicine, including using that money to bring down the cost of food up north. I should note that there have been some recent initiatives by the government in terms of taking forays in this direction, but I think there's a lot more we could do, especially if we implemented a broad system as they've done in Mexico and some Scandinavian countries. So I think that would help a lot for northern food production and bringing costs down. On your second parts of your question dealing with justice and the child and family services, you're absolutely right. We need to do more. The impact of having so many kids in care, moving around from foster home to foster home, and then, maybe they don't get the supports when they age out, and all of a sudden they get themselves involved in crime, and now all of a sudden their economic opportunities are more limited. And we lose the potential of people. So it's absolutely fundamental that we start to deal with that. In terms of what we want to do with the child and family services, I've noted some of this. We want to get the number of caseworkers, the number of cases per worker below 20. We want to support more customary adoption practices, as well as trying to maybe subsidize some adoption in some cases so we can keep a continuous parent with a child if they do need to be taken out of the home. And we need to give more supports to families so that they can keep the kids in the home. We can focus on keeping families together. And when it comes to justice, we're firmly in favor of a restorative justice approach. And we have a lot to learn from Indigenous people about how you properly implement restorative justice.
Also, as well, I'm sorry about that, but wouldn't it be also better to educate our people what to, supposing if you commit a crime, say if you have a B&E or maybe assault and to commit a crime, like to commit a murder, for example. The other person, the people that's Aboriginal, they get maybe 15 years, 5 years, or maybe, and another person commits the same crime, they only get a couple of months. So wouldn't it be better if we educate our people about the law and the criminal, like if they want to be a lawyer, for example, then we can teach, we can get taught how to be, but only the basics of the law, not the full amount, not the full.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's let the other candidates answer this seemingly three-point question on child and family services, food costs in the north, and justice.
What I think we need to have prevention in the communities. I've lived on 2 reserves. I volunteered on one for 2.5 years with Child and Family Services. I liked what they did. They built 7 4-bed units, start bringing the children home, train the people in the community to be respite workers, to work with to take care of the children, did preventive work with the parents so the parents can take their children home. Sometimes there would probably be very few cases where the children can't go home. But this has worked, and this is what we need to do. We need to stop sending our children out. I was a foster parent too. I couldn't do it anymore because you get to love the kids and then they're moving them. And it's very hard. And I raised my 5 children myself. And the food costs, I know the food costs up north they're horrible. It's like milk and a can of tomatoes, a can of no-name tomatoes is $8. I couldn't believe it. But we have to start maybe doing our own gardens. I know there's some initiatives in the north that are doing our own gardens. We grew up picking all the berries all year round. I know there's still lots of animals in the bush there that are put there, that the Creator put there for our use. There's fishing. You can fish all year round. One thing I want to share, 2.5 years ago, I wasn't feeling good. Went to the doctor because I was thirsty, I was tired. He said, Edna, you're a diabetic. I said, no, I'm not. He says, well, you know what, do something about it. So I did. Today, I am not a diabetic. So we have to educate our people on how to eat. Read those labels in the back there. My mother died from cancer. She got all the drugs. I didn't want her to take those drugs. I said, Mom, let's try some natural medicine. Some medicine that comes from our people, from the ground. But no, you know, pharmaceuticals are multi-million, billion dollars, and they're just killing our people. So we have, you know, as Native people, we were always talking about getting back to our grassroots. Let's get back to our grassroots. We never sent our children away. We always took care of our children. And my dad was an alcoholic for about 10, 15 years. And then I asked him when he sobered up, the last 7 years he was sober. I said, Dad, why did you drink? He said, because there was
time.
I felt ashamed of who I was and there was no jobs. We
Thank
need
you.
to start giving our people back jobs.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you very much, Lawrence, for your question. First of all, let me reiterate what I said earlier. We have a partnership arrangement with the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs called Key Energy. And in partnership with the AMC, we've supported food markets in all the 4 Island Lake communities and the Meacham Farm Project at Garden Hill. We also have the Affirm program, which has reduced food prices at 10 communities in Manitoba that include Taduta Lake, Brochet, Shamattawa, York Landing, and a few others. On the issue of child and family services, I was taken away when I was a little boy. I was not quite 5 years old when they took me away, and they put me at the Jack River Indian Residential School. And I was just about 9 years old when I finally left there, and my dad took care of me because by then I had no mother. The practice, and I've been in recent days hearing the commentary that the current child welfare system is just a carry-on of the residential school system. I agree to a large degree with that statement made by many of our leaders. We're in this together. We have a leadership council, the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, the MKO, the Southern Chiefs Organization, the Manitoba Métis Federation, and we're addressing this issue together. There's far too many children in care, and there's no doubt about that. And we have a lot of work to do. But to blame one level of government is unfair, and I think that we have to all take responsibility to a large degree for our children.
Thank you.
So when you look at the Child and Family Services system, you need to look at how government is working with Indigenous people. Government needs to be working with all Indigenous people at the table together. You can't be going to organization after organization or after person and discussing what is going to happen with Child and Family Services. This needs to be a collective discussion, it needs to be a collective agreement, and it needs to happen with community and not just different leadership within this province. And so when you look at the system, the will is got to be there. And with the Manitoba Liberal Party, the will is there to change the system. The families have the solutions. And when we look at those solutions, it's just a restructuring, and it's just a matter of listening to our families.
Hi, I'm from Kiwetinook, so it's nice that some reserves get the programs, but what we're looking to do is invest $25 million for nutrition officers in the north, in the First Nation communities, educating the people on how to eat healthy, providing breakfast and lunches for these kids that go to school, because it's not their fault that they're in such impoverished conditions. And then we also hope with that 25 million, we are also going to have subsidies for fresh fruits and vegetables and milk so that our people are eating healthier, they're surviving longer, and there won't be a need for dialysis units, because we're going to start educating our people, get to the heart of the issue. That way we're not wasting millions on these dialysis units. People won't no longer need this. And I thank you for sharing your story, Edna, regarding your scare into getting diabetes. Thank you.
Just want to reiterate, I hear lots of commitments around to my colleague's point about dialysis units, and one of the real travesties of this government's healthcare policies, one of the really sad situations to the north is we don't address the root of the diabetes epidemic. We have to stop talking about, yes, we have to provide universal health care, but we have to get to the root cause as to why so many people are sick. And the root cause is poverty. And our commitment to eradicating poverty in the north and working towards that as a provincial partner is sound. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so at the very beginning, I told you that I work as a correctional officer at Headingley Correctional Center, and I love having conversations with my fellow officers, but I really much more enjoy having conversations and meetings with the inmates there. And I'll tell you what, I have learned an awful lot about what that word justice means. Justice is a word that is bandied about all the time, and I don't think anybody ever stops to think, what does it even mean? And I'll give you an example of that right now. First of all, working in a correctional center, I see what happens when you have different sectors of the government all breaking down together. Healthcare, education, the child and family services, and our justice system itself. We create something that is an absolute tragedy. 11,000 children right now in CFS is a tragedy. But here's the thing. You take these 11,000 children right now and you don't do a proper job of looking after them. There's no accountability. By the way, somehow we have got it into our thinking that government is the solution to all of our problems. Government created these problems. We all need to remember that government sometimes is the worst avenue of trying to fix things. When I have conversations with those inmates, you would be surprised at how productive they are. Just talking to people. We talk about talking, but you know, in the end, I'm not even sure if we're really prepared to engage in a conversation where we can hear the other person's point of view, challenge each other. You know, but let me just say this about the children who go through our justice system. By the time they're 12, 13, 14 years old, they have been treated so unjustly. And all those young years crying out for justice, and nobody was listening. And then all of a sudden when they're 16, 17, 18 years old, we're saying we want justice. They did the crime, they should do the time. Those children were denied justice all their lives. This is something that has to change. It has to change. And I am committed, I'm absolutely committed. Even if I'm not elected, I promise you I'm going to do something, because the solution is not going to come from government, it's going to come from people when they become aware of the problem and they say, we simply cannot take this anymore, and we will not put up with it.
Thank you. Thank you. So I got an urgent text from a chief to say, what are you going to do to let our people into America once President Trump builds his wall at the border? I was told to be a little lighter. That's funny. So we got a timer for questions as well, which is 2 minutes. The next question is right over there. I was also told that originally this was programmed? No, scheduled for 4 o'clock, was it? We did start a little bit later, so how about we go to 4:30? So if we talk quicker and answer questions quicker, we might get a little bit more in. Go ahead. Next question.
I was going to ask the PC candidate, but she left.
Oh.
She went to the washroom, I think. You want to go get her?
There is another PC candidate here. Perhaps the person behind you can ask his question
another
until
PC
she
candidate
when
here?
she comes back.
Where? Okay. The first question is for the PC candidate. I'm really happy that a lot of Indigenous people are getting involved in politics now. You know, we have a good voter turnout at the federal election, and we got a lot of Indigenous candidates here. But I think I have a theory for why the NDP have so many candidates. I think all the white men are quitting on them. That's supposed to be a joke. I got it. And for the Liberals, I think John Girard was pretty shy and quiet all these years. So that's another joke. I have 3 questions. For the first one is for the PC candidate, why they don't have any Indigenous candidates. Okay. The second question and the third question require yes or no. If you get elected, you know, everybody's talking about the bipole, how much it's going to cost on the west side. And the taxpayers are complaining. If you get elected, the PCs or Liberals, will you move the bipole to the east side? Number 3, there's 3 communities getting connected with no weather road. The plans are in place. York Landing, War Lake, Split Lake. If you get elected, the PCs and Liberals, are you going to cancel the project?
Okay, your first question was, why don't the PC party have any Indigenous candidates? Did you
Well,
say?
how come the PCs don't have any Indigenous candidates?
Well, I'm from Matthias Clone Cree Nation. I'm Cree.
How
Don't let the
many
Silpisa
how
blonde
many are
here-
there?
We have 5.
5?
Yes, we do.
Where?
They're running in Winnipeg here. Myrna, do you know where the candidates are running in which ridings? We do have 5.
Okay, I didn't know that. I guess I haven't been reading
And
the
your
Sun.
second question was, I personally think Bipole 3 should have been done on the east side. It would have been done already. There would have been a road to all the communities. It would have created jobs. We're just wasting a whole bunch of money.
Okay, if you get elected, will you move it to the east side?
Yes, I would. But that's just me. That's.
What's your party's position?
You know what? I'm sure they would support me.
What's your party's position?
We don't, you know what, we don't know yet. We don't know how far along it is, but we know that there's a lot of people that are very unhappy in the south.
What's your position? Are you going to move it to the east side? No. Yes or no?
We don't know.
You're saying no.
No, I'm not saying no.
You're saying yes? What are you saying?
I just told you what I thought of it. I thought it would be better on the east side.
What's your party's position?
15 years it's been starting to build over there.
I just really quickly wanted to answer your Bipole 3 portion of the question. In the last election, we made it clear that we would have put a pause on future hydro developments. I want to note that the building of it is what's causing a 50% increase in rates over the next 10 years. So we would have put a pause and invested more in micro generation capacity, particularly where we're using it a little bit more in southern Manitoba, so rooftop solar, small scale wind, etc. Now, to answer your question about Bipole 3, though, I think sadly at this point, it's already so far along, I don't know if anyone could feasibly turn it around in a different direction, because as I understand it, it's basically half built. But I did note, and I did want to note again, that it's important to recognize that we have Indigenous harvesters all up the east and the west side of this province, and we need to work with them all.
Yes or no?
I didn't hear any question to me, Dan, but my position is very clear on the east
I didn't ask you
side.
a question, Eric.
What's that?
I'm just kidding.
You didn't ask me one? Okay, well, that's even better. Well, listen, you know my position on the east side. It was the people that lived there that told us they didn't want a transmission line along the east side. The west side was the preferred route because of the security system, and there's already development in that area of the province of Manitoba. That's why the west was eventually selected as the preferred route. Now, some people may not like that, but we're quite a ways down the road on the development, and anybody that tells you that they are going to switch and go to the east side is telling you a lie, because it is way beyond that now. I think that what the people told us about the east side, and this gives me an opportunity to talk about Pimachiwanaki. Pimachiwanaki is the site which is one of the last intact boreal forests in the world. And we're working very hard to protect that very small part of Mother Earth, which represents the lungs of our Mother Earth. And we got to protect that, and we're working towards a designation by the United Nations into designating that area of the world as a heritage site to prevent any future mass development within that region. And that is one of the reasons why the elders and the knowledge keepers of the east side said no to a transmission line.
So to answer your question,
The hydro project? No, we announced the scoping study already, so we're going to proceed with that. Well, I'm not going to.
Those, those type of decisions, until we form government and have a look at everything, I don't think we have an answer for that at this point in time. I know there's a lot of important roads and northern development that needs to take place, and we take all of that very seriously. I'm not saying that at all.
Next party.
okay, so just to clarify what we're, because I'm moderator, we've bounced around a bit here. What were the actual questions here?
Oh, I didn't take note. I thought they were directed at particular parties, so I thought you were monitoring the
bipoll.
party
I've
with
got, I'm sorry. Yes, okay. So it is a Manitoba Liberal position, first and foremost, that we don't think this is a campaign decision right now, and actually politicizing money that we've already spent on tax dollars in the creation of how far they've gone on the west side means that we're not going to stay, we're going to close it, or we're going to change it, because ultimately it's our understanding that it's in progress. And it's gone so far that to reverse it would be just a huge cost to our citizens and to Manitoba Hydro, and to be irresponsible. However, the Honourable Eric Robinson keeps talking about how this is what the people of the east side wanted. And I am reminded right now why we're in a democracy, because I guess the people in Keewatin-Nook are going to get a chance to vote on whether or not Eric made that decision correctly or not. April 19th, Eric, the people of Keewatin-Nook will have a word to say to you on that decision. Thank you very much.
Next party.
Manitoba Party's position is very simple. Right wing and left wing is for hockey. We're a modern party, down the center with an underwater cable just like Europe's doing.
Short and sweet. Next person for a question. We got 10 minutes left.
We have to study, realistically, we stand with the PCs. We have to study that to make a decision if we're going to cancel it or not, sir.
Thank you.
I'll be super brief.
Awesome.
I participated the last 2 days in the same venue, listening to positive results and progress made simply due to availability of connectivity. We heard from a neurosurgeon in Saskatchewan describing the assessment of patients in remote and isolated communities. The care he described is more than telehealth. It's actually a handheld CT scan. My question is, how committed are the candidates or parties towards assisting and facilitating connectivity to the northern and remote communities in this province by investing the resources that are needed.
Short and sweet, starting from my left.
Okay, the Manitoba Party, like we said before, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, like we said before, turning over the resources back to the people and allowing those resources, the money from them, to fund things like this, to improve the living conditions, etc., without the government interfering and taking that money away from you.
Next party.
Hi. For the Kiwetinoong, the Liberal Party, I was surprised to learn about telehealth. It's not as advocated as it should be, and learning that there are a number of people that have been saved by this program in one of these places that I visited, because that's how they access suicide prevention. It's a direct link. It's all through access, and it's a wonderful program, and it has saved lives. And what I wouldn't have given for it to be in all our communities. And I'm tired of this where certain reserves get selected for certain things. It should be over and done with. All reserves should be accessing this telehealth for all kinds of systems, for all kinds of health issues. There's even in Saskatchewan a robotic doctor. And if you could think back and have a good laugh, but Sheldon once portrayed this in The Big Bang Theory. And it's exactly that same kind of system. A computer-generated robot with a doctor's face looks at the health issues that this child's facing, has a partner working there to diagnose. And it saves billions, because we're no longer medevacing 70 communities every night try and get these services in the urban areas. So yes, telehealth is an awesome thing, and one of the things we are going to definitely look into, and I will fight for our communities. Thank you.
Well, I happen to know that one of the reasons Saskatchewan has telehealth is because they have a Crown corporation called SaskTel that is owned by the government that has extended fiber optics and cable into all communities. We had a Crown corporation that was privatized and will not extend the links to the other communities. There's only one entity in Manitoba that has the capacity to do that, and they've already agreed to do it. That is Manitoba Hydro has a fiber optic system and a gray line system that they've already agreed to work with First Nations to bring telehealth, to bring telephone cable, to bring internet services and broadband into all communities. They're the only people capable of it. It happens to be under federal jurisdiction, and I think we'll get approval from the federal government. I think this new federal government is open to that option. So we have the capacity in Manitoba Hydro. Manitoba Hydro has agreed to do it. It's only a question of putting the plan into place, and we've already started discussions on that. But if you leave it to private enterprise to build infrastructure, and this is the new infrastructure, this is the future, you can only do it by all Manitobans working together, and that's through our Crown Corporation of Manitoba Hydro, which is why we have to keep it in public hands, which is why we have the first time in Canada, an Indigenous person is minister responsible for Manitoba Hydro, and which is why we have 4 board members who are Indigenous on the board of Manitoba Hydro who understand these issues and will build for the future. Thank you.
Next party.
I would definitely support telehealth. There's too many people, they have to come out of the communities. It's costly. Some people get lost here if they have to come with an escort. When I had my last child, I had to fly here from Churchill. I had to stay here for 7 weeks. That was devastating for me, and my other children missed me. I just had a friend that just had a baby from Pangasi. She had to come and stay here for 8 weeks. So I definitely would support that. It would save a lot of money. It would save people.
Excellent. Next party.
Speaking personally, I would 100% support telehealth, connecting communities, connecting people with resources, health resources, being able to talk to a doctor at 4 in the morning when you actually need to talk to a doctor instead of relying on someone at the nurse's station who's half awake. It's a great idea. It should be implemented everywhere. And personally, I feel that we shouldn't wait for the federal government because these are communities in Manitoba. These are communities that the Manitoba government has, taken responsibility for, and it should just be done, period.
Thank you. We've got to 4:27, and I said that we would continue until 4:30, so it unfortunately seems that this is it for now. There are a number of questions that the AMC and the chiefs have identified that are relevant for provincial jurisdiction that I'll follow up with you, each of the parties, and you'll have an opportunity to be able to respond in the area of climate change, the right to hunt, flooding, child tax benefit, clean energy, and gaming. Because you've covered a number of things that were already identified before. We didn't get to some of the questions that have been expressed to me that would like to be asked, but we'll follow up with that. I would like to also thank people who are watching online and also for the people that were here. And I should like to ask for Elder Bone to do a closing prayer.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me in the back? Can you hear me in the back? Thank you very much. It's always an honor for an elder to be asked to come and speak, to provide a prayer, but also some closing remarks at the end of the day. But just to remind you that the prayer that I provided this morning or this afternoon simply said a number of things. One of them that, I had asked the Creator to bless us with respect and kindness, and to make sure that all of us were given that spirit. But I also asked the Creator that the voices that we heard today from all our speakers, the voices would be given a spirit for action. In other words, the ones that I've spoken today, not only have they spoken, but they have a responsibility to action, okay, to make sure that they follow up the words. That's what the prayer said. The prayer also mentioned children and our women, make sure that they're honored and protected. So I think, for all of us, that prayer guides us, and it gives us, the 7 guiding principles of who we are as Anishinaabe nations, to make sure that, we're guided by the Creator in a holistic way. So with that, I just want to, tell you that, this prayer does not have a closing prayer because it's a prayer that's alive, that must go on in the movement that we created today. Make sure it has some meaning on behalf of our people. But the people that have spoken, I think we should honor them for their commitment to speak for us in the future of our country. In particular, the young people. I think we should honor them for them to to bless them, to give them encouragement, to make sure that they're guided by the wisdom and courage. So I ask you today that the Creator will guide you to wherever you're on a journey with a blessing in terms of wisdom, in terms of courage and good health, because you are going to speak for our children and our women. So with that, may the Creator bless all of you. Jimmy Gwich.
Can you tell me about something?